Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube. And the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hardsuit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk.
Roll a d6.
Oh, here we are. Are we here? Okay. Hopefully, can everybody hear me? I hope they can. All of a sudden, I had a technical problem right here at the beginning here. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to Table Talk. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office. I am so glad you're here. Tonight, we have what I think is going to be a very interesting conversation because as I was talking with Doug earlier, I'm not even sure what direction to go with all of this because there's so much that could possibly be said about this movie from so many different perspectives. We're going to be talking about Fight Club, which I know is in violation of the rules. That's not that we're going to be talking about Fight Club. And with me to talk about Fight Club is Douglas A. Burton. Welcome.
All right. Very cool.
Oh, and I hear you here. I'll put on, this is part of the problem. I hear you coming through my headphones, so I'll just.
Oh, right on.
All right, here we go.
And need that technical difficulty to start. Were you trying to splice in a single frame of pornography into the
Well, if I had only been able to, do that, that would have been funny. No, that was not what I was trying to do. But if you saw that, well, we'll just see what that says about you.
They don't know they saw it, but they did.
All right, so this is going to be epic. Before we introduce ourselves, Doug, I'm going to bring this up because we do have to toast everybody who's here. So we should see. We got James here. I mean, a lot of the core crew is here. James, BGD, Zero the Blade is here. Let's see. We've got Sherry Lee. Hello, everybody.
Awesome.
Daniel is here. Did I say break the first? Yes, they're all ready. So we just crossed 1,000 subscribers this morning on the new Table Talk channel here on YouTube. So if you're watching someplace else, I'm going to put this in the comments right here. Table Talk on YouTube. 1,000 subscribers this morning. So that is amazing. We've been having this. We've established this channel about 3 months ago as its own independent brand, and then over the past 28 days, we've gotten 576 subscribers over here on the channel.
That's amazing.
So it is. So we appreciate everyone who is here with us, who has been part of this. You guys are, I mean, obviously what is making the channel grow, and we appreciate that you like what we are doing here on the channel.
I look around. I see a bunch of new faces, which means a bunch of you have been breaking the first rule of Table Talk.
No, you can definitely talk about Table Talk. The first rule of Table Talk is go and talk about Table Talk. So to everybody who has the 1,000 subscribers, whether you're here watching live or whether you're going to be watching on replay or whether you watch the clips or whatever it is, here's to you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's extraordinary growth, Heath.
It is. So we must be doing something right and something that people appreciate here on Table Talk. So
awesome.
That's amazing. All right, Doug, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is Doug Burton, and I am an author of historical fiction. My debut novel was Faraway Bird, which is about Byzantine Empress Theodora. And while writing it, I ran into trouble with the hero's journey, which is a story structure that I fully endorse. It just didn't work for her story, and it led me on a 3-year crusade to find a feminine equivalent to the hero's journey. And I came up with The Heroine's Labyrinth, and that is a book that will be coming out in February 2024. The Heroine's Labyrinth, Archetypal Designs in Heroine-Led Fiction. And funny enough, Fight Club is even mentioned in that book, because it adheres almost perfectly to the Heroine's Labyrinth narrative structure. So that's a little bit about who I am. And if you're looking for a great Christmas gift, I can't tell you, Faraway Bird is such a great read.
And I've got the audiobook now.
Oh,
so there is an audiobook. So there is an audiobook now. So
Yes.
you can, and Doug was talking about how there is, you got custom audio and music for that. So I want to experience everything that you want to give it with.
Oh, awesome. That's great. I hope you love it.
So if you physical book available, audiobook also available.
Awesome. Yep. Thumbtack.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Yeah, I actually got the audiobook off of Apple. So audiobook is on Apple. I mean, I think it's here too. I think I've had the link over here on Amazon, but it's on Apple books. At least the audiobook is, and that's where I got it. I keep all my books on Apple Books, so it is there.
Very cool.
Let's see. So then also tonight is also a special night because I am wrapping up the Kickstarter for The Trial of St. Gabriel. This is my dark short story of the Christmas Massacre. It's just a short story, and you can get in for only $4. We've got 71 minutes to go. So here in 71 minutes, I'm going to be keeping track of this. We'll cut over, and we'll actually wrap up the Kickstarter here live on the show. So if you are here and you want to support, well, of course, looking at the Faraway Bird for Doug, but then also The Trial of St. Gabriel. This is a short story. It deals with things like prophecy, with free will. It addresses the massacre of the innocents that Herod orchestrates in Bethlehem. So it deals with things that you don't often deal with, or at least here when you're talking about the Christmas story, and tries to take them seriously and what those particular themes would be. That's why I call it a dark short story about the Christmas massacre in Bethlehem. And so if you want the ebook, it is here. And then also there is going to be, well, I'm not sure where my proof went, but there's a second proof incoming. They're also soft cover physical books. And so I would love to have you on the Trial of St. Gabriel Kickstarter tonight, but you got 70 minutes. We're on the countdown. 70 minutes. I put the link in the chat. Please come over and pick up the Trial of St. Gabriel. That would be huge.
Awesome. And I am a backer, and I've read it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, Doug was one of the beta readers on it, and so was James Bacon in the chat.
Yeah, it's worth it. If you're looking for a short story, what do you want? You want to be entertained and something thought-provoking in a short period of time, and this is exactly that. So I strongly recommend it.
All right. How do we were talking about how do we even approach Fight Club?
Well, I think
before we started this, how do we do this?
Thematically, I think is definitely one way to approach it. Structurally, I watched it twice for this stream, and I was able to, and I had already studied it in the past, and it turned out that it doesn't fit a hero's journey, like at all. But it does fit the heroine's labyrinth almost beat for beat. It does assume a little bit of a different order, but that's always the case with the hero's journey as well. It doesn't have to go in a single chronology. So we can discuss it in the rubric of the heroine's labyrinth. We can also talk about it in terms of the context of the time and maybe how this might have been viewed if it were to come out today versus 1999 when it came out. What we think it means. There's a lot going on in Fight Club. And also it is kind of a cult classic. Even while watching it, I was kind of amazed at how many lines were classic lines. I mean, in every scene, it seemed to be chock full of just memorable, quotable lines left and right. So there a lot going on with Fight Club. It's really withstood the test of time.
I agree that I think that trying to approach this thematically is probably the best way, because often we do, like with Star Trek, we'll be approaching things like scene by scene and what it means. But I had not seen this movie in a long time. I saw it. I didn't see it in the theaters, but I would imagine that I saw it soon after it came out on VHS, that I probably saw it on VHS. That was probably around the time I was working I probably saw it because I was working in a movie store, and it was probably real popular when it came out on VHS. And so that's probably why I saw it, but I hadn't seen it since then. So I watched it last night. I turned off, all the electronics, things like that, just other than what's necessary to watch the movie, and just sat down to watch the movie and was taking notes. And I was specifically trying to take notes of things like theme and meaning and what the movie was trying to say throughout all that. And then after I did that, then I went to look at some things that other people were saying about Fight Club and other analysis. And I was like, oh my God, that's got stuff in it that I hadn't even thought about. What does that mean? And so I was thinking about that. I took more notes. I was watching YouTube videos. I was reading blogs. I watched a podcast with the author. The author was on Joe Rogan. Actually, that's just as I was searching for stuff about Fight Club. And, on YouTube, that came up that Joe Rogan had interviewed the author. And so I was like, oh, well, then I should watch that. So I was watching that today, or trying to watch that, listen to it, as I was working on a bunch of other stuff this afternoon. And then I tried to watch the whole thing again with all of this in mind this afternoon, and got about 80% of the way through it. So,
wow.
This is another one of those, like, if you gave me another 12 hours, I could probably prepare another 12 hours.
Yeah, totally. Fight Club, there's a lot to unpack in it. It's also one of those rare shows that has massive philosophical depth, philosophical range, a real dark edginess to it, and then surprisingly funny. There's a lot of humor in this. And, that's why I think the depth of the film is why I think this has withstood the test of time. And by the way, we should probably mention it does come from a book,
yes.
Fight Club, which I have read.
Chuck Palahniuk, that was the author, Chuck Palahniuc. So
right.
He wrote the book originally. So there he is. Oh yeah, he's got his name up there.
So yeah, I've read the book. It's been a while, so I don't remember too much difference. There are some differences in the book, but I'm not as clear on the differences in the book between the movie, but I do know that the movie was a fairly good adaptation of the book. So, and he even said that, and I forgot what I think I read in the introduction to when I was reading the book that the author he was having trouble winning a contest, a writing contest, and he decided he wanted to write something that scared the shit out of the person reading it. So his goal was to write something about a group of people that seemed convincing enough to scare the reader, that people like this could exist with this philosophy and you couldn't do anything to stop them. That was the idea, that he wanted to scare you in thinking that this could happen, that it was believable.
All right.
I do have a kind of a funny story I wanted to share real quick. It's a brief one, but Fight Club ties into this. Maybe about 15 years ago, less than that, but somewhere around that range, I used to have a large aquarium and I used to have turtles in it. And I used to love buying kind of like exotic baby turtles and letting them grow in this aquarium. And it was so funny. Right when I had kids, I had bought a couple of painted turtles, which are pretty common. Actually, they're not exotic, but I bought them. And I remember there's this little one and I was like, man, what am I going to name this guy? What is this guy's name is what I said. I go, what is this guy's name? And I was looking at this turtle, and Fight Club happened to be on in the background. And the exact scene was, his name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson. So I was like, shit, that's a sign from somewhere. This turtle's name is Robert Paulson. So I named that turtle Robert Paulson because of that. And it's funny, my kids, or my oldest, Jacob, remembers when we let him go free. He remembers Robert Paulson, the turtle. Eventually, when we downsized and stuff, I had to get rid of the aquarium, so we let the turtles go free. But Robert Paulson is out there somewhere in Austin, Texas, swimming free in a lake somewhere.
Oh, well, that is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what kind of notes did you start off with as far as the theme goes?
Well, one thing that I discovered, I have my own theory on this, based on breaking this down through the rubric of the heroine's labyrinth. By trying to understand how all the pieces fit together, I uncovered something that I had never, ever considered before. But I think one of the themes, and we can get into this as we go, is missing femininity. There's several things that start to feed back into this idea that what's missing is femininity from these guys' their lives. And I'll get into them a little bit more in depth, but there are several references to femininity in certain ways as this film progresses. And I think it's embodied almost directly through Marla Singer, which I believe is she's the thematically speaking, she represents femininity, and the characters respond to her according to that. And she is kind of what breaks up the and saves, in a way, the lead character, which we never even get a name for him. I'm gonna call him Cornelius. I think he's mentioned in IMDb as the narrator, but it's unusual that he doesn't have a name. So I think we can call him Cornelius. But anyway, yeah. So there's several issues that show femininity as a vital or misunderstood, missing essence in the lives of the characters.
Okay.
Which is almost counterintuitive, because I view this film, and always have viewed it, as kind of an uber, manly film. It's a guy's film. However, my wife will sit down and watch it. She likes Fight Club. So it does cross the aisle, so to say, in that term. But I would definitely categorize this as a guy's film, I guess. What about you? What would you think on that?
Well, okay. I think it's interesting you say that you think it's about the missing feminine.
Missing feminine, yes.
The missing feminine. But even though they seem to perceive this inside the movie as they're experiencing too much of the feminine.
Well, I think that's one of the ways they relate to it at certain parts. But I can explain as we go the different areas where femininity seems to be preferred by these guys in a very counterintuitive way, but it's consistent. And I did not ever think of this before until I started structuring it, and this theme kept coming back up. And then there was a few scenes where I was like, oh my God, there it is again. And then, oh my God, there it is again. So like I said, this is a very masculine film. And like I said, I think Marla Singer represents the missing feminine, which she has a profound effect on Cornelius. She's what actually, according to the structure, she would represent the sacred fire for Cornelius. The sacred fire is usually what the heroine, or in this case, the lead character, cares about the most, and will change course for or make their cause in a way. And by the end of the film, it's protecting Marla Singer that causes Cornelius to kind of break up this split personality that's been dominating him. So she is the catalyst for breaking that up. And I define in the book the sacred fire as kind of a combination of two things: a creative force, or an attractive force, and a creative power. And I just found it interesting. And so creativity, artistry is usually one of the elements for creative power. And her last name is Singer, which is a reference to music or art in that sense. So there is some reference to it. Secondly, she's always seen smoking a cigarette. So there's always like that. I was trying to look for fire symbolism, and she is almost always introduced with a cigarette with the burning tip of the cigarette. So to me, probably unconsciously, that the tip of that cigarette to me kind of denotes a little bit of a fire theme for her. She breathes smoke in one scene, like a slow-mo scene where smoke is just coming out of her mouth. So there's that. A couple other things is they introduced Bob as having bitch tits. So you have this feminine quality attached to a male. And also this character is another part of the catalyst that changes Cornelius to turn against this split personality. Also, when they try to threaten the public figures, it's through castration, the removal of their balls.
Right, there is a lot of castration themes.
Right, so there's a castration motif that follows through this, and this is their punishment to these guys, which again is to remove their manhood, to remove that. And the character, Cornelius himself, when he goes into the police station later, is subjecting himself semi-knowingly, because he's the one that gave the order. Even if I come in here to try to stop this, you take my ball. Remember, they're like, we really admire you, sir. So he semi-knowingly subjects himself to this treatment in the film, which I thought was interesting, or it played into this theme. And also there's that line by Tyler Durden where he's like, I'm wondering if another woman isn't really the thing we need.
Well, not another woman's the thing we need. I don't think it's the contrary. He's saying that I don't think that a woman is the answer.
That was a different conversation.
Oh, that's a different conversation. I'm thinking of the bathtub. In the bathtub, he's like, I don't really think a woman is what we need here.
No, he says we're a generation of men raised by women.
Right, we're a generation of men raised by women. I don't really think another woman is the answer here, or something to that effect.
Well, he says he suggests that it is what they need, because the next scene is Marla Singer is reintroduced into the narrative. He says, I'm wondering if another woman is really what we need, which I guess you could take as sarcasm, like that's the last thing we need. But formulaically, at least as far as the film is concerned, Marla Singer is quickly reintroduced into this story right after that commentary. And then
okay. So the line I'm looking with Tyler in the bathtub is a generation of men raised by women.
Right.
I'm wondering if another woman is the answer we really need.
Right.
I took that sarcastically. Like
I took that as,
like, what are you doing with a woman? Like we don't need, the answer is not having another woman in here.
I actually took that as fake sarcasm, more suggestive. Like, yeah, maybe, I'm wondering if another woman is really what we need. Suggestive to him, like, it's almost like, hey, when I leave here, don't push that button. What's the first thing you're going to want to do? So I took it as leading him toward the idea that if there's a woman, go find her. And since they're the same person, that's really an internal struggle. And it led him, at least in terms of the conclusion from that, to go pursue Marla Singer again. So there's that suggestion there that Marla Singer is important, and continuously through the film, it leads him to her. And then another thing, when she tries to reintroduce herself to Cornelius, she also does it through a breast exam. That's something only a woman could ask for. So it's this strange breast exam that he gives her, and he doesn't respond to it, and she gets frustrated with him. But to me, that was a very feminine-only kind of way to get him over there. She's not saying change my tire or do something. It's a breast exam, which is also another reference to the female anatomy, just like Bob's bitch tits. So there's these little things kind of woven in there. And then lastly, in the analysis I have in the book for The Heroine's Labyrinth, I discuss at length what it is the Minotaur usually seeks from the heroine. And one of the more deep philosophical conclusions I had was the feminine essence itself. There are certain cases where the motivation of the masked Minotaur is puzzling. And I used Silence of the Lambs as an example, where Hannibal Lecter trades secrets on Buffalo Bill in exchange for stories that Clarice gives him, background stories. And I was like, what's Hannibal really getting? And my answer to Silence of the Lambs was the feminine essence. He's not trying to sleep with her. He's not going to be able to do that. So it doesn't seem to be an actual sexual exchange or a pursuit of sex. He wants the feminine essence. And there's even that scene where his finger brushes hers, that like spooky knuckle brush. And this theme of capturing the feminine essence is echoed in Silence of the Lambs again, because Buffalo Bill himself wants to be a woman. He physically takes the physical aspects of a woman and dresses himself in it. So that theme is paralleled. It's also in Little Mermaid. When she has an exchange with Ursula she wants to be human. And what does she have to trade? Her voice, just the song, that melody out of her voice. That's an odd exchange too for the masked Minotaur, but it seems to represent the same thing, which is the feminine essence. So in this case, I tried to see if there was any example of the Minotaur trying to capture a feminine essence more directly. And there actually was. And it was while I was trying to figure out what the hell the soap represented. Okay, what do you need to make soap? You need human fat. So they go to a liposuction and they take fat from physical body part, in a sense, from women in order to produce this fat. He says that hysterical line, or to produce the soap. He says that hysterical line, we were selling rich women their own fat asses back to them.
Right.
But if you think about it, that's physically taking up some part of a woman and recreating something from it. So there is that idea of capturing something feminine and taking it for yourself. And what does he do with it? He also makes nitroglycerin, which feeds the Minotaur side, the need for chaos. So anyway, I did find this theme consistent through the story. And in the end, he does kind of reconcile with Marla Singer. So and I'm not saying that's the only theme, by the way, or even the dominant theme, but I am saying it is a theme that is consistent through the story. One that I had not seen before. That's why I find it so fascinating.
Well, let me go to BGD, and then I'll say what I've got here. But BG says, I think in the bathtub scene, I think Tyler is challenging the idea that men raised by women are in need of a female partner for completion. That's the way I took it, especially the way that, in the medium that Brad Pitt delivers that line. I was thinking that he was rejecting the idea that we need a woman to be complete.
Well, Tyler is.
Yeah. Well, Tyler is right. Tyler is right. James says, I think the driving theme of the film is powerlessness and power reclamation.
That is
like that too.
Completely consistent theme in The Heroine's Labyrinth, almost exclusively. It's what the captivity bargain is all about, the broken truth. So I think James is 100% correct in an overarching way that is absolutely a theme in the story.
So when I was watching it and I was trying to take notes of themes for the first time, I started with some of what I thought were the most obvious things that hit me. And then as it goes further down, it gets deeper and deeper. And that's why I'm even thinking, hey, I got you on both channels, Jason. Good to see you on the Table Talk channel, the actual dedicated Table Talk channel. Watching
Awesome.
there helps us out. So, like, one of the most obvious themes that people talk about is mindless materialism,
Consumerism, right?
Right. Yes. So this is something that is there. Definitely. I was thinking about this in terms of other movies of the late 90s, because we also talk about that every film is a product of its time. And so it seemed like a number of films that had this theme in it in the late 90s. What were people thinking? This was pre 9/11, after the fall of the Soviet Union. Computers were appearing in the workplace. This theme of what do we do here? What do we do with ourselves? And what do we do inside this workspace that's now all of a sudden become computers, and the very beginnings of networking?
Correct.
Very beginnings of kinds of networking. This comes up. So they talk about mindless materialism and consumerism, but I was thinking that in today, one of the reasons this movie still continues to resonate with people today, and I think that one of the reasons that must be is because it still addresses themes that are relevant today. And so consumerism, materialism, I had made a note that even if we're not talking about materialism today in the most strict sense, we're talking about the mindless digital. If in a world full of the constant Instagram photos or TikToks or Instagram reels and stuff like that is always just consume constant, often low effort digital content. Hopefully that's not what we're making here on Table Talk, but it's still just this idea of consumption. That's where I started with. That was the very first note that I wrote down, and I think that's there. But then I think we go even deeper than that, because it seems like we've got multiple different layers, because there was stuff I realized that may not even be here. But I wrote down something about searching for something external to help you. That here I am, I'm looking for some type of completion. And so I'm looking for something external. Even in the most basic sense, early in that movie, I'm going shopping for more IKEA furniture. What will make me complete? What's going to make me whole? Well, once I buy the right stuff, it's something external that once I get, then I will be able to be complete, instead of realizing that you're the problem.
Well, yeah, all change has to be internal. That is a message both with the hero's journey and the heroine's labyrinth. And a lot of stories deal with that, where the protagonist is seeking something kind of like a false idol, something that they think will fix them that's not internal, and it doesn't work. The change has to become internal. And you're very correct. It is a massive theme, especially in the beginning of the film. In fact, my notes are the labyrinth itself, the native culture that he's fighting against, is corporate America and the consumerism. He lays out several rules of consumerism that he can't stand. Planets will be named by corporations, Planet Starbucks, and they have really cool animation in this, by the way. The realistic animation where they go into the trash can, and when the condo blows up, where they zoom around in the condo. Anyway, but yeah, consumerism. It's got a strong anti-consumerism message in this, and he has that haiku he writes. Worker bees are free or something, but the queen is their slave. The kind of the inverse, that the workers are the ones that control the world, and that the queen, the so-called queen, is the slave to the worker bees. That was a haiku he was sending out in the company.
Let me say, BGD says right here on this theme, BGD says Fight Club's monumental challenge to persuasive corporate monoculture is probably the healthiest and most wait, how do we pronounce this word?
Indefatigable.
Indefatigable thematic messages it presents, still meaningful and relevant after almost 25 years. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. The corporate culture can be nauseating in just about anytime a company tries to tell you like they've got it figured out. It's pretty easy to see through. And when they really get aggressive about it, it can become almost annoying and ridiculous. But yeah, there's a ton of that messaging in here. And that is the world that Cornelius begins to fight against. To me, that represents the native culture that is imposing too much of itself and upon him, and that is the world he is trying to break away from. Very, very prevalent in the Heroine's Labyrinth model. There's a native cultural claim, and it's usually stifling. There's a win or lose type of gamesmanship to it that they usually resist. And then there's a penalty if you don't follow the rules, and a reward if you do. All of that is part of that corporate, I think he said monoculture. That's a great word, which Cornelius is very much against. And I think James Bacon even said the word powerlessness. He feels powerless to this. And there's a strong ethical resistance to this when he I apply the formula. If A plus B is less than, X, we don't do a recall. And she's like, which car company do you work for? He's like, a major one. So this idea that companies will allow these bad things to happen as long as it's cheaper than the lawsuit. A clear ethical condemnation.
One issue that we're really going to have to get to later is what actually happens in this movie. But one of the things, because we've got an unreliable narrator here, so at the end of the movie, you can actually question everything, which is where I ended up going after all of this, and questioning what even actually happens in this movie is questionable. But when he was talking to the doctor and he wants medication early on, it kind of struck me as it's a weird conversation to have with your doctor. I can't sleep. The doctor, can you give me something? The doctor's like, no. I mean, that is kind of a weird thing for the doctor to say.
And he was a pretty young doctor.
It's a young doctor. It's a weird thing for him to say, but it's also like, okay, you think you've got problems. Go and check out people who actually have problems.
Yes.
But even then, what happens there? And so that sends him down.
Well, and notice there's another feminine reference. He's trying to get something prescribed to him to help him sleep, and he describes lipstick red Sachinals, something to help him sleep. So there's just another odd feminine reference there from him. I think something seductive. I think that's more of a seductive reference. But you're right. The doctor rejects his request for a prescription and makes what I took as kind of an offhand remark about, you want to see real problems, go down to the First Methodist, check out those people. And he actually, once again, follows this lead, which turns into an entire chapter of the story, which is one of my favorites.
Which is, this whole story is morbid and dark. And I think the more you think about it, the potential more that it can get that way. Because yes, so then what he does and what he enjoys is going to these people's support groups of people who are dying.
Yes. Dying or the a castration theme.
Castration thing, right? It actually introduced through. Well, it's often because of a cancer, right? So that could kill you.
Testicular cancer.
But, testicular cancer. You're going to have the removal of the testicles,
right?
Is actually how this goes, and that's what the doctor tells him to go and see.
Yeah. And I think that part of this storytelling is genius. There's something so original about Fight Club, and especially this kind of descent into this support group universe, this world he finds himself in. Who thinks of this? I just every time I watch the movie, I'm fascinated.
I hope I'll be able to one day.
What's that?
I hope I'll be able to one day.
Me too, Heath. I hope you do, because when you are witnessing genius, and I do think there's parts of Fight Club that are ingenious from a writing perspective. It's always nice to sit back and bask in it, and just admire, the originality of the storytelling. So yeah, but you do talk about the darkness of it. It's really unusual for someone to find comfort in the misery of others. I guess maybe that's not that strange, but here's a very exaggerated example of that, where he could not sleep, and the way he finds his ability to sleep again, breaks the narcolepsy, is by going to the self-help group or support groups and crying. And there's that great scene where his face is buried in Bob's breasts, bitch tits. And he's like, and then it happened. And he just starts bawling. And there's this brilliant use of Gregorian chant that plays. So it gives it this like sacred music to this moment. I love that scene.
The visuals and the cinematography throughout this, not only we're dealing with something very morbid, very violent, very grotesque with the violence, but just everybody looks horrible in such a great way. The cinematography in it with just everybody, the people at these different support groups, and what the theme of the cinematography is completely on point. It looks grotesque. It gives you this particular feeling that completely supports what this story is. Marla, the way she looks,
she is fantastic.
She does look just absolutely fantastic. Helen Bonham Carter did a fantastic job with this, and the way they costumed her and everything like that.
I think this was one of her, if not her, I think it's one of her best roles, if not her best role ever. I love her as Marla Singer.
Yeah. And, when you're looking like I said, I saw this movie early, like probably not in the theaters, but once it came out on VHS, it was probably when I saw it. But probably it's possible that like her representation on screen has done a lot for like the kind of women I like. This dark hair, light skin, just about to die.
A little bit
kind of look, right? Coughing, right? Yes.
A little bit of chaos,
right? Yes. I mean that's possible.
She. Excuse me. Yeah, one of her great. He's like, her great tragedy was that she wanted to die, or Marla wanted to die, but her great tragedy was that she didn't. And she just walks into that street, and cars like.
Well, we're going to talk about that too, right? Yeah, and nobody. They do stop once, but they should be standing there and just go. The cars will be going by her. She does not care.
It shows a. And by the way, I'll get into this later. That's an allowance for randomness, which is a theme that I talk about in the Heroine's Labyrinth as well. She just walks out there. She gets hit. Like, she's cool with that. And that randomness theme is played out later in that car crash test that they do, where he allows randomness basically to drive the car. So there is some of that there as well. But yeah, I thought Marla Singer was a great character. And to your point, there is something like I was attracted to about her when I saw it. So there is something about her.
It's the Walking Dead kind of thing that actually BGD is talking about here. David Fincher is well known for his cinematic use of high contrast lighting and desaturated color to give the characters that Walking Dead look in many of the scenes. It's a key element of his style.
Well, yeah, and David Fincher is, he's become one of the better directors out there. If there's a David Fincher film, I'll usually go check it out, just because he will take an angle on it and he will deliver a good product for the most part. I wasn't too happy with Alien 3, but this movie is definitely one of his best works, in my opinion. And that's great commentary, BGD.
I was thinking from the modern perspective, this is 1999 to here. Hey, John, welcome. Found us on the Table Talk channel. Thank you to everybody who's watching on the Table Talk channel, because we do need watch hours on the actual Table Talk channel in order to monetize us over here and stuff. We got the subscribers now. 1,000 subscribers. We over that mark. We just need watch hours over here. So
awesome.
So we appreciate everybody watching here or later. If you're just doing something where you can watch YouTube videos and watch YouTube videos, you can rewatch Table Talk stuff on replay. Clips and stuff. We even Brianna and I are working this afternoon putting out clips and stuff on the channel. But okay, so what do we think? There's a difference between here, 1999, today. If a woman comes into the testicular cancer treatment,
and what about her opening line? This is cancer, right? Completely like insensitive. What an intro line for a
it was
character.
almost like when you walk in like a school scene in like a high school or college show, movie, when somebody's going to a particular study hall and like somebody walks in like in 21, like, wait, so this is like biology, right? This is biology study hall.
Like she's in the wrong classroom.
Right.
That's great. That's great, Heath. But what's funny is that the voiceover after that, this chick, Marla Singer, did not have testicular cancer. Like, I love that the voiceover felt the need to address that when it's like obvious.
Well, but that's what I was thinking about in today's world, though, when we are dealing with all kinds of trans issues and things like that. That would they show something like that? Because it's supposed to be obvious that Marla Singer does not have testicular cancer because she is a woman. But on the other hand, today, would you put something like that in a movie? Because can you be sure that if somebody who is female presenting walks into the testicular cancer treatment thing, that they don't actually have testicular cancer? Is that something you would show today?
They might approach it differently.
Yeah, but in 1999, that's something that's supposed to be obvious, to the point of the absurdity when he actually says it. Oh my God, this woman who walks in does not have testicular cancer. So I wonder if that would even be something that would play today.
Well, and she makes that comment. She's like, technically, I have more of a right to be there than you. You still have your balls.
Right. Yes. Oh, okay. So another theme, and actually, I suppose this person I was talking to once in my life must have gotten this from this movie, or at least it's some other theme that had come up in this movie. Maybe actually got it from this movie because he may have been a fan of it. But another theme is
agreed. BGD.
Oh, what does BGD says?
Oh no, he was
BGD. Oh, BGD says Fat Club was not politically correct even back in 1999. Another point to its credit, BGD says.
Correct. I agree with that.
Excellent point. Yes. Oh, BGD is pulling for Alien 3. Let's see.
Alien 3 has its own things going for it, but it just, to me anyway, it didn't hold up to the first two.
But the theme here that I was talking about was your stuff owning you. Mm-hmm. That you have this materialism and you think you own a bunch of stuff, but at the end of the day, and this is true with a lot of things, that at the end of the day, your stuff ends up having a lot of power over you. I guess it's power versus powerlessness. You end up with a bunch of stuff and it has power over you and your stuff starts to control you. So that's definitely another thing that shows up.
Right. That is the anti-consumerism message there for sure. And there's always going to be truth to that. He's like, why do men like you and me know what a duvet is? Right, like,
is that really something we need?
Yeah. Do we need that in a hunter-gatherer sense? No. And then he gets mad about Martha Stewart. But yeah, so yeah, there's at the whole bar scene, there's clearly a back and forth where Tyler Durden lays out his anti-consumerism mantras, which sets up what happens with the condo later. The way to be free of all of the stuff is to destroy it all. The problem, I'll just point out, is that if you start to become the type of person that does not value material things at all, you might be on the extreme. You become the kind of person that destroys materialism in all its forms, and you become a terrorist, which is what they become in the extreme form of anti-consumerism later.
Yes. Yeah. So it's showing you two extremes, which I want to get back to as well. So we're looking at two different extremes here. But what you're talking about, there is also this theme, another theme that's running through here, is of self-sabotage or self-destruction. Self-destruction is very present in this. Beginning sort of a glamorization of self-destruction. Of course,
Absolutely.
going to the extreme that you're like, okay, that you actually end up in a very terrible place when you go down this far. But like a romanticization of self-destruction, self-sabotage, because self-destruction and self-sabotaging is something here, especially if we have the destruction of the apartment, which is kind of what starts that theme. That I've worked all of this and now it's gone.
Right. Well, it's and that's a terrorist act, So the idea that the things you own end up owning you. And when I saw this, I was 23 years old. This movie spoke to me. I was very, very much influenced by it. So I was like, yeah, screw this stuff. Like what the hell? Companies have you chasing things you don't need. This whole. But then what if you don't have anything that you want, like a book or a house or a computer or equipment to do a live stream, or there is some consumerism that's perfectly healthy. So the movie does get into that you can cross a line, where anti-consumerism can become an obsession that can become destructive. But there is a seductive notion in this idea that we don't need self-improvement. What we really need is self-destruction.
What we need is self-destruction.
Right.
Yes. That's a big one. What is exactly the
he says, I think self-improvement is masturbation.
Self-improvement.
Right.
Now, self-destruction is what we need. And it was kind of left off here because I was looking at that. So I was thinking that, yes, self-improvement is masturbation.
Right.
Now in the film, actually, he says now self-destruction, and he kind of gets trailed off on that line. But in the script, the line is self-improvement is masturbation. Self-destruction is the answer.
Well, so are you reading the script versus the subtitles?
Script. The script says self-improvement is masturbation. Self-destruction is the answer. That's what's in the script.
Well, I think in the film he gets bumped into by the guy on the bus.
Right. So he's cut off. He says now self-destruction, and he kind of trails off.
And it's funny. When I was 23, I remember when I was watching this, I always thought that one of the hypocritical things of the story, they're on this bus and they're like, yeah, self-destruction is the way. And Cornelius looks at an advertisement of like Calvin Klein. He's like, is that what a man's body's supposed to look like? And they're like, and they're laughing. And then in the very next scene, Brad Pitt's like all ripped in the Fight Club scene. I'm like, you just totally went against your own philosophy.
Well, the physicality, like I said, we're not going in any particular order here. We're just coming up and what comes up because the physicality of the characters is a big part of this.
Yes.
The inversion of the physicality of the characters, Brad Pitt as an idealized specimen, a male specimen, an idealized male. His clothing, of course, he gets more and more ripped as you go. And of course, lots of guys want to look like Brad Pitt. And that was a deliberate change because as Brad Pitt starts looking better and better physically, Edward Norton's character declines in physicality. He intentionally starved himself. So you see them go like this during the whole thing. So Brad Pitt was working out more and more. So yes, Tyler Durden gets more and more ripped and more physical as the movie goes on. And Edward Norton, Cornelius gets intentionally and more emaciated as this goes.
Interesting.
But also Tyler's clothing, I think, is significant because when he shows up first, you see Tyler Durden kind of, Tyler says later on that I'm everything that you want to be.
Yeah.
But what exactly he sees that as, what Cornelius sees that as, what he wants to be, changes throughout the film. So that means that what Brad Pitt is changes throughout the film. So when you first meet Tyler Durden, he's obviously very, has a great physique and all of that, but he's not as built as he is going to be later in the movie. But he's got all of the great clothing on. He's got the leather jacket and the sunglasses and then all of that. But then his clothing, even though his physical body starts to increase as the movie goes on, his clothing and the kinds of things that he wears decreases. And I think that's because early on in the movie, Cornelius is associating with what do I want? Material things, the clothes, the great, he even jumps into the car. So that's what Tyler is in the beginning. But in the end, it's more about his physicality. He's wearing garbage and like even a pimp's like jacket and stuff like that at the end of the movie.
Almost like homeless clothes. You know, as it goes on. But you're right. He's very kind of stylistically, you know, chaotic macho. I guess you could call it, but trendy, right? With the stylized haircut and the the leather jacket and the big rose-colored sunglasses. You know, pretty decked out. Yeah, and like you said, he steals like the nice car. So yeah, there is that element to him. But in terms of it structurally, the relationship between the heroine and what I call the beast as ally, he fits the dual role. So his initial, what made him attractive to Cornelius in terms of the structure are the beast as ally issues. And the beast as ally, it says the beast is also drawn to the heroine and may even attempt to capture the heroine, which Tyler Durden does. And secondly, he's a voice of nonconformity. So the heroine structurally is frustrated by cultural rules. This is common in the heroine's labyrinth model. So it's the rules that feel like the labyrinth, the structure that keeps them confined. And the beast as ally is someone who is a non-conforming individual, which the heroine finds very attractive because of their lack of conformity, their lack of social convention. Tyler Durden completely fits this model. So even though it's two guys.
So when we're talking about the heroine's labyrinth here, you are saying that this happens to be a story that conforms very, very, very closely to the heroine's labyrinth, but it happens to have a male protagonist, because we've talked a lot about the difference between male and masculine and female and feminine, how we can swap those things up in storytelling, and all of that. So you're saying here we have a male who we're calling Cornelius at this point. Cornelius, who is attracted to Tyler, who is playing the Minotaur.
Well, he is the beast as ally.
Oh, the beast is ally. Beast is ally. Okay, beast is ally. So he's
but here's the twist with Fight Club. Okay. He's unmasked as the Minotaur later. So he plays a dual role because he is the tyrannical Minotaur in the end. However, structurally, he follows the beast as ally motif. He fulfills that role almost to the T. He is the nonconformist who bucks the trends of and the social conventions of society. He's the one who adopts the heroine's cause. So the heroine in this case would be Cornelius, structurally speaking. And Cornelius is the one who's frustrated by corporate monoculture. And it is Tyler Durden who decides to take that on to the highest levels, to the point where he's blowing out skyscrapers and destroying corporate art and Project Mayhem is born. So the beast as ally always adopts the heroine's cause, which is exactly what happens. But the key is he's a nonconformist to society or to the native culture that the heroine feels penned in by, and that is a key element. So he fulfills this role almost to the T. He's like Han Solo. Or any beast as ally in all these films who are kind of social outcasts or antisocial or exhibit that nonconformist behavior. Sometimes even doing something illegal. Han Solo is a smuggler, who I think is based off Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, who is also a smuggler. They even I've read the book, by the way, Gone with the Wind. There's even lines that are weirdly, suspiciously close to Star Wars lines. But anyway, by Rhett Butler and Han Solo. But that's the beast as ally role, and Tyler Durden fits that.
Another thing that I like that comes up is the idea that you don't know yourself unless you've been in a fight.
Correct.
Often I've seen this inverted. People say, well, you don't know somebody else until you fought them. Which
that was in the Matrix Reloaded.
Right. Yeah. How do you know? You don't know somebody else until you fought them. Here, we're talking about you don't know yourself until you've been in a fight. Which is a core theme here.
Well, and not only that, his rule is get into a fight and lose.
Yes, that's one of the first homework assignments is you have to provoke a fight, which they say is harder than
this
you would
is
expect.
Harder than you think. That montage is great.
Yeah.
They're like chasing people down to fight me. And then he's spraying down the priest, and the priest gives him this like knuckle slap of a punch, which is really weak. He's like,
and then it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's like, people will do almost anything to avoid a fight. And even said in another line earlier in the film, he's like, Fight Club is not about winning or losing. So you just get into the fight. It's not about trying to win the fight, which is a non-egoist position. You know, it's about the fighting itself.
He says nothing is settled. At the end, nothing is settled because there was nothing on the line. It's just the purpose is the fight. It's the feeling. It's feeling. I think a lot of this. So people also talk about like Fight Club starting and things like that after this show, and whether the author was like, you know, maybe this you've misinterpreted and misunderstood, but it's a search for feeling. Like when you're in the corporate culture, how can I actually feel something and know that I'm alive? Well, and they do this through violence.
Well, it's an act of rebellion in a way, because if you care about your appearance, we'll get into a fight and F up your face. Now you're free of that concern. You don't have to worry about your appearance. And they show these guys, and it's pretty funny. They show up to work with like, is that blood on your shirt? And he's like, some of it, yeah.
Is that your blood? Is that your blood on your shirt? Some of it, yeah.
But he's like, but he even says like, yeah, what of it? Like, what do you care? So, but and not, you know, and injuring yourself. You're not worried about your health. You know, you're telling your boss to screw off. You don't worry about advancement anymore, you know? So the idea is it frees you from caring about these things you think you care about. So they're acts of rebellion. And by destroying or damaging yourself, you're free of power. And this theme is echoed again in that great scene where he's like, Lou's Tavern. He's like, yeah, and I'm effing Lou. You know, and then Lou's trying to beat him, and he's just like hanging there, and he's laughing, and he's trying to show that you can't hurt. You know, you could beat me all you want. I like it. So that takes away the power of violence from Lou. And in the end, he does a chaotic thing. You don't know where I've been, Lou, and he's like shaking blood on the guy. He switches the power dynamic.
Yeah, Lou can't handle the result of what he's done.
Right. And he's like, I swear on my mother. But that's another echo of the idea that self-destruction is a form of empowerment by taking away the power of the thing above you. So that's echoed there. You know, looks like the aggressor. And by the end of it, it is Tyler Durden who gets what he wants out of it.
And that's when, after that, that's when he issues the homework assignment to go and lose the fight, because that seems on the surface like a weird thing for Tyler to have done. Wasn't Tyler supposed to beat that guy up? Wasn't Lou supposed to, like, kick that guy's ass? But he doesn't. He embraces getting beaten up. And even the only thing that guy had over him was the physical power that he was, and he took that away from him. That's exactly what it was. So if you're like, hey, if I'm out there in the world and I get into a fight and I lose, doesn't that make me, lesser, or take away my power or whatever it is that you want to put on that? And in that moment, it's supposed to be like, no, the purpose is just that you were in a fight, and most people aren't even going to do that. So if you can, most people aren't even going to get into a fight with you. So you have that over them. But even when somebody does get into a fight with you, are they going to be able to tolerate and endure what they actually did to you as a result of that fight? And then you're still on top.
Right. Yeah. It's a reversal of the power dynamic.
Yeah. Should you fear losing? He's saying no.
Well, even like, for example, writing, they always tell you like, write bad writing first. You're going to have to get through a bunch of bad writing. So part of the idea behind that is get over yourself. Hey, you're not Michelangelo. Make bad art. You're not Leo Tolstoy. Write bad writing. Get over yourself. Write bad writing. That's your starting point. It is a growth mentality in the sense that you have to start where you're at. a lot of us when we're 16, 17, or who knows how old we get, we expect our writing or our art or our craft, whatever that is, to be at the level of our favorites, the masters. And it's not. So one of the ways to get you over yourself is to break down that and accept something bad out of yourself in order to get beyond it. In this case, we're talking about violence. Accept violence, accept loss, and you won't care if you win or lose. That's power. There's a power there if you have no concern for protecting yourself or anything about it. There is a power dynamic there. It's a dangerous one, but it is a power dynamic.
The BGD says Fight Club is a very postmodern assertion of the classical romantic ideal of the value of subjective experience and emotion. Nice.
I think that's correct. It's very clearly anti-mainstream, anti-consumerism. You could argue it's anti-capitalism, although he sells soap in order to fund him, his operation. But it's clearly anti-consumerism.
Well, he is exploiting the vanity and the consumerism of that in order to fund his operations.
Well, but it's also a byproduct of making explosives. So there is a utility there.
Yes. Yeah, there's no, I said anti-consumeristic culture. Yes, he says there's no great war, because this is also what is being dealt with at this time. There's no great war. Like, what are we supposed to do? There's no great war. There's no, spiritual war for our lives. What are we supposed to go and do? Are we supposed to just sit in cubicles, and is that it?
Right.
When we're talking about the end of history, I suppose, especially like we have come to the end of history.
Yes.
Here we are. Great. Fantastic. So what does that mean? Does
Right.
that mean sit in a cubicle?
Yeah.
That's what's being grappled with.
Well, I think you're right. What is the ultimate goal there? And clearly Cornelius wasn't satisfied by his successful consumerism. He had a good corporate job, it appeared, made looks like a decent living and was, able to look like he was doing okay. But he clearly was as empty as possible on the inside. So yeah. And there's that great line where he's like, our Great Depression is our lives.
Right. Yes.
There are some great Tyler lines in this. I mean, just packed throughout the film.
The theme of corporate sabotage or bribery. I was trying to think of, and people in the chat might also have other ideas about movies of this era that had that theme of extortion, bribery, or sabotage of corporate life. So this one has it because he beats himself up in front of his boss and, tries to, and successfully extorts him, of the money. That happens in Office Space. Also a classic. When did Office Space come out?
Good question. Office Space. 2000.
I'm looking it up right now. February 1999.
Oh, it is 1999.
So
okay,
same time.
Year.
So we have another movie in that theme about extorting your office. That also comes up in American Beauty.
Oh, big time.
What year was that?
That was 1999. I was going to say 1999.
That's 3 movies that came out in 1999. That must have definitely been in the zeitgeist of the time. This idea of listen, what am I? I'm this cog in this corporate wheel sitting here in this cubicle, and now if I can find some way to extort or bribe my way out of it, that's success. That's flipping the tables. That's 3 movies with that theme.
But again, it's a form of rebellion. And the other movie that I was going to point out, and John NJDM just said it, The Matrix, which also came out in 1999. There was some anti-mainstream sentiments there as well.
Well, yes. There wasn't. I didn't put that one on this particular list because Neo doesn't extort his boss, but he comes, for salary and stuff like that because of what's going on. But it's still this theme, as they say today, adjacent. this same very theme adjacent with Matrix. I would definitely.
Well, but there's that line in the Matrix where he's like, these people are hopelessly dependent on the system.
Yes, right.
Which makes them our enemy. So, there is this idea of rebellion against the system theme that was similar. Even if it wasn't the idea of sabotage or corporate extortion, it was at least along this idea of fighting the system.
It's fighting the system, but when we also have this idea of flipping the tables on the corporate structure, we've got the idea that all these people are dependent upon the bosses, the corporate structure, all of those, but that if you flip that from a power perspective, like when they grab the guy and drag him into the bathroom and all of that, that you think you're on top. But if all of us got together down here at the bottom, you're going to find out who's dependent upon who real fast.
Right.
That's also a theme there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, clearly. Yeah, that's clearly a theme. One thing I was going to ask you about, Heath, did you catch the call to adventure in this?
The call to adventure.
It's one of the best ones because it's so literal.
Is that the punch me?
Nope, that's after.
No, that's after the call to adventure. Oh, what is the call to adventure? Let me get my notes out. I'm going to listen. What is the call to adventure here?
And there is a refusal of the call in this one.
And there's a refusal. Okay.
It's a beautiful one because it's so literal.
Okay, what is it?
It's the payphone rings. The condo blows up.
Oh.
And he was going to call Marla Singer, and then she's like, I can hear you breathing, you like creep. And he hangs up right away. And he turns around, and then the phone rings. And he turns around, and the phone just rings. And it's Tyler Durden on the phone. And that's when he goes to meet Tyler at Lou's Tavern for the first time. That's his call to adventure. And then
it's a literal phone call.
It's a literal call to adventure, right? And that's when Tyler starts laying out his anti-native culture, anti-consumerism philosophy. And then they're walking out, and he's like, he's like, cut the foreplay. You needed a place to stay. And he's like, oh, no. He's totally refusing the call. He's like, no, don't worry about it. I'll get a taxi. And that's when Tyler's like, hit me as hard as you can. So anyway, there's the call to adventure literally on the phone, which he picks up. So he answers the call in that sense, but then he tries to refuse the call after it's offered to him briefly before accepting the call after.
And as I was reading here, there's a sticker on that phone.
Oh,
that says incoming calls not allowed.
Oh, really?
So that's one of the things that's in this movie that tells you that's not real. So that was, obviously he did not receive that phone call. And there's even a sticker on that phone that says the incoming calls are not allowed.
Oh, that's great. I'd never noticed that. Well, and he says he star 69'd him, which isn't true because he never called in the first place.
No, he did. He called both. He called
Marla. He did call from the car.
He called Marla, and then I can hear you breathing, and he hangs up. And then he calls.
Okay, the paper's right,
and there was no answer, and he hung up. And then Tyler calls back.
Okay, so then what you're pointing out is the critical detail. No incoming calls allowed.
The sign said that you shouldn't be able to get an incoming call. Now, whether that was technically true or not, but the sign on that said, that's in other words, the things that does not happen. Those kinds of details.
And I always get a kick out of him eating potato chips on that call. It's such like an arrogant thing to do, just chomping away. I always got a kick out of that.
So, but, okay. So what do we say after that?
R69, right, John? That dates the film now.
I know. John says, yeah. So I know. I haven't thought about Star 6. I hadn't thought about it all until I watched this again. Like nobody knows what in the world that is now. Oh, well, first of all, even how to use a payphone, even though I suppose payphones are out there. But when somebody says, "Oh, I starred 69 you," what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That is of its era yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it sure is. That's great. But anyway, the condo, since we're at this scene, represents a black swan event, which is a sudden destabilization of the heroine's world. This is clearly a black swan event. And I even talk about, let me find the criteria here. Often includes apocalyptic imagery or severe damage to the home environment. So this is about as severe as you could get. And it also reinforces the heroine's distrust, which would be Cornelius in this case, distrust of predictable human conventions. The randomness of and chaos of the black swan may help or hinder the heroine, which in this case is Cornelius. So anyway, the black swan event and the idea, and I have this whole chapter in here in the black swan, or a subchapter that discusses heroines and apocalyptic imagery, which are oddly persistent. And although it's not it's apocalyptic to his apartment, but there's this odd montage or this monologue of Tyler Durden talking about vines growing up the Sears Tower, and you look down, you see people pounding corn on the super high, the abandoned super highways and all that. So there's this weird post-apocalyptic monologue by Tyler Durden, which is otherwise out of place, unless that's the ideal world he's hoping to create in a post-material world. Oh, yeah. Thanks, BGD.
Yeah, please do give this a like. Yep, please like it, especially if you're over on, if you're watching this someplace else. Of course, you're welcome to watch. We stream in different locations, but the Table Talk channel is where we're trying, on YouTube, is where we're trying to establish this as its own brand and just passed 1,000 subscribers. So if you're watching someplace else and you just see this message in the chat about, well, that's where the YouTube channel is, and we really like if you would subscribe there and like there and share from there and get some watch hours on there. Thank you, BGD. And I also want to point out that also, I just put a link. We are now 3 minutes. So if you want to back the Trial of St. Gabriel, we are 3 minutes and counting until the end of this.
This is it.
So this is it. So this is the dark story of the Christmas massacre. It deals with subjects that you don't typically deal with in Christmas stories, which is what Drake was talking about, which I was thinking, making people confront things, which actually this movie does too.
Yes.
Which I think we'll talk about that some more. But this movie is definitely something to think about and something that makes you confront something. I was trying to confront things that you don't typically confront in Christmas stories as well. So this is a short story. Please come over. I would love it if you would come over and get the ebook. It's only $4, but there are short stories as well. Softback copies of the short story over there as well. So, we're both, Doug and I are people who do things, and other people on this channel as well. We make stuff. I didn't want to make this channel just something that was the critics of all different kinds of things. So we are the doers.
Creators with critiques.
Yes. So that's a part of it. Not if we talk about things we like, things we don't like, but in the meantime, we are making things happen. So shortly, we're still dual streaming on Heath's Geekverse and Table Talk. Once we get enough watch hours over on the Table Talk channel, we will then make the transition to just on the Table Talk channel. So right now, we are still in the liminal phase where we're doing both, but we're going to be going completely over to Table Talk as soon as we get the watch hours. We need like 1,400 more watch hours or something like that on this channel in order to monetize. Oh, now we're counting down seconds.
We're on the clock.
And
we're on the clock. Let's make it happen.
So please do come in. Yeah, come in. You've got 110 seconds. Oh, Andrew liked both streams. Well, that's also great. That's also great. But actually, we were working today on and yesterday on the Arcane stuff. I put together a trailer for Arcane that's going to be coming out. I'm almost done with it. I sent some of the material to Doug. So we're going to be putting out a lot more stuff on the Table Talk channel.
Yeah, it's coming out great. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I showed it to Brianna this afternoon, and she also loved it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I think we're going to get a lot more interest over on the Table Talk channel. All right, well, 70 seconds to go, and then we'll wrap up. Then we'll get over here. I already have the update ready to go out as soon as this closes out.
Oh, right on.
So yeah, so we'll be ready to go. Oh, we're now, it's serious when it turns red. So I appreciate everybody who's been part of this and also been part of part of this stream and also the Trial of St. Gabriel. Do you know how are you releasing are you going to do a crowdfunding campaign for have you decided
I'm not going
yet?
to do a crowdfunding campaign, but I am. It's due to come out February 2024. We just don't know. We might do a pre-order campaign to try to get a bunch of sales at once, which is good because you want people to read it as soon as possible. So you want to try to get the word out as good as you can. So
this is for the Heroine's Labyrinth.
For the Heroine's Labyrinth, yes, that's right.
All right,
there we go. This is your last chance.
5, 4,
Come on.
3, 2, 1. There we go.
Oh,
somebody came
right.
in. Somebody snuck in. We got 22 right last minute. Somebody came
That's
in.
awesome.
Thank you.
That is great.
All right. So there we go. I'm gonna press the button on putting this out. Oh, Jay, it was John. It was John.
Awesome.
John was number 22. Awesome. All
John,
right.
right on, man.
Thank you, John. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna take this down and I'm gonna.
That was a good contribution
update.
too.
Yes, that was fantastic. Thank you, John.
Very, very cool.
I already have the update loaded into the draft. I had to update the information. I'm glad you got it. That's hysterical. All right. So final update going out. All right. So that's done. That's done. That's in the books. I'll send out all of the ebooks, and then I'm still waiting on the second proof of the physical copy to get here. But I mean, it's going out. So it's all explained in the update. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations, Heath.
Thank you. I've been trying to do a Christmas story for years, so I made it happen. I was like, "This is happening this year," so I made it happen. All right. So anyway, back to
Fight Club.
Okay. Where am I going?
I just wanted to give a kind of some praise for one of my favorite segments, one of my favorite montages, perhaps of all time, is that montage where he discovers the support groups, where he's like, "I became addicted," and it shows like this beautiful montage of all of these different like signs, the coffee, the donuts, the people hugging and crying. The more they cried, the more I cried. It's one of the most unique original montage or monologues, like a voiceover monologue I think I've ever heard. And every time I'm watching Fight Club, when this part comes on, it's like pure viewing pleasure. I just love it from a writing standpoint, a directing standpoint. There's so much to like about it. You only get this in Fight Club. And the music. I have to say, one of the things that I'm upset about is this music in this montage is not on the soundtrack. I have looked ever since 1999. I've looked for extended versions, the complete recordings, whatever. I even bought the vinyl. This song is nowhere. It doesn't exist on any soundtrack. So that music is only available in the film. Or, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Somebody recreated it on YouTube. Let me add the link here. I'm going to add it in the chat. Let me see if that works. Check that out. That's the music from Fight Club. It's the only place I've ever found where you can hear it. Somebody recreated it with the choral and the Gregorian chant in the background and the falsetto. The woman, soprano? Why am I mixing that up for some reason? Anyway, it's all in there. It's in that link on somebody recreated it on YouTube. So, and that music is perfect for that segment. So anyway, I just want to take 1 second and, I guess mine just cuts and pastes.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say, will you put it in the private chat and then I'll
sure. Yeah.
Repost. That way I can get it too.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Every now and then I go on another little crusade to find this music. And every time I do, I ended up having to go back to YouTube to hear the only version of it available. And I'm a music guy. I'm a soundtrack guy. I collect soundtracks. So those things are big deals to me.
So we talked about we've talked about the theme of materialism or anti-materialism and all of that going on, and I think in its most simplistic form, it's easy to try to embrace the opposite of that, which I think is often something that occurs when people are. I mean, this is obviously a very popular movie that we need to embrace the opposite of that. But one of the things that I was thinking that occurred to me as I was watching through here is that you're contrasting the materialistic, consumeristic culture, corporate culture, all of that, and then you go into a place of feeling, a place of violence, a place of raw
Passion.
living. You're feeling right. That's right. But it's not like that goes to a good place either, because it would be easy to say, hey, we're going to celebrate the other. And I think some people do. But, by the time you're into the story deeper, when you've got the people living at the house with them, and you're into Project Mayhem, and you're into cult-like repetitions about the name of Robert.
His name is Robert Paulson.
You are inside. You've gone again to a very herd-like, sheep-like mentality of following. It's not like in that case you're showing people with great individuality and drive and doing something like that. Yes, they're experiencing the feeling. I think that is a big part of this, the feeling of the violence. Like, I want to feel something. Gee, I want to feel something. So what is it like to get hit, and what's going on? I think that's because it's also not like you go down and you learn expert Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like an MMA fight or something. Like, that's not what's going on here either. You don't have like expert martial artists who are teaching you, great katas and or whatever else is going. It's just the raw beat the snot out of each other and enjoy that kind of feeling. But then that ends up in a drone-like, cult-like environment as well. And I think that I was using the term manosphere with Doug, which I don't actually know if that was manifest in 1999, but I was trying to look up some of the development of that, because today people talk about the red pill, they talk about the manosphere, the men going their own way, Mutah, and I don't know I've watched some of that, so I know a little bit about it, and I was trying to watch some of it, more of it today. Like, wait a minute, because it's obviously, I don't think, commentary on that, because it's 1999 and we didn't have, I don't think, those terms. I don't think, but certainly if they did exist, they were not in common usage. That strikes me as more of a 2010, 2015 kind of thing.
2015.
But you could see that kind of embrace that, like, okay, well, listen, what are we supposed to do as guys? We're going into the manosphere. It also sometimes just I just find it funny that something like a word like the manosphere exists. Okay, so I'm going full red pill. I'm going into the manosphere, but it's not like this movie presents that as a great place to go.
Well, and BGD just had an interesting comment. He's like, Fight Club doesn't present a solution; it presents an alternative.
I think that's excellent, BGD. It's an alternative. And that alternative is desired by some. But yeah, that was my point, that it's not like by the end of this time you get to this movie that you have a solution to consumerism and stuff like that through this. You have Andrew says, I find the manosphere funny as well. I know. I think about that. I've thought about different kinds of like skits and things like that, like, all right, it is time to enter the manosphere. All right, yes. What's going on in the manosphere tonight? So, because I think I think a lot of people potentially on the surface level read it as what we would consider today pro-manosphere kinds of things. But it's not necessarily that. It's not necessarily. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that.
If it were to come out today, it would probably be grouped as that. I think due to its time period, it's hard to I think you're right. I think it's hard to say that it is that, because it came from a time period where those concepts, those ideas, that movement, whatever, just didn't exist. This was a sense of like expressionism, I guess you could say. And this was a codified philosophy that came out. But, as you see, even in the film, it leads really nowhere. It's more of an act of rebellion than a replacement system for what it is. And when I was younger, this like I said, this movie influenced me a lot. I'd watch it, I'm like, oh man, so many good points. And even today, even if I don't agree with all of it today, I still think it's brilliantly done. The answer isn't, fascism and terrorism. Obviously, that's not better than a workable society, a workable society with flaws. I think the issue on some level is balance. Some consumerism is good. When I go to the grocery store and buy food for my family, am I, destroying, is this a terrible thing? If I buy a lot of books, is that bad? Are there some things that I buy that I don't need? Absolutely. But then is that worse than blowing up a skyscraper? Obviously not. So
there's not that, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So clearly, you could start with valid criticism. In fact, this movie is funny because it really shows how radicalism can work. You can get a valid criticism, a sensible, workable alternative, and then pretty soon you're on this fast track to blowing buildings up, and creating nitroglycerin and cult-like chants and setting up franchises around the world. So I think in that sense, it's effective. I admire the movie for running with their premise until it hits that wall. I don't mind that. I think it's an honest, it's a form of it's a form of honesty of the theme. They don't try to glorify it to a disingenuous way. This is what we're doing. We know it's wrong. It's crazy. And we're going to drive this thing until we crash.
But a lot of the glorification probably comes from Brad Pitt himself. First of all, he really plays good. He plays it fantastically. And of course, he is this, amazingly attractive guy. And also for this movie, he reaches what many guys consider like the peak of physical fitness. And we're like, like when they're out working in the gym and stuff, be like, that's what I want to look like. In fact, I've even used pictures of Brad Pitt in the lookbook for Theophany, for when I was saying, what do I want the angels to look like as far as like peak of physical fitness and things like that. I've actually used Brad Pitt from the Fight Club as that type of physicality. So
but to be fair, I don't, when I was 23, I wasn't working out because Calvin Klein ads made me think I should. Men realized pretty early on, like physically fit males get a lot of attention from women. So I think most guys work out because they want to be attractive to women, or just plain athletic. Sometimes you work out just to be better at football or better at baseball. So I think this movie in that sense was a little narrow in terms of why guys wanted to look like that. They made it seem like we only did it because commercials said we should. But I think even without commercials, even in the Roman times, guys worked out. Why? Well, you're going to be a gladiator or a soldier or you got to be good at something. So being physically capable, being athletic, those things matter. And women find it attractive. So, I mean, that's a motivating factor for a lot of guys.
Andrew says, while I had to look up the exact wording, I do remember from 2002's Lilo and Stitch. You wreck everything you touch. Why not try to make something for a change? I love that. I'm not familiar with Lilo and Stitch. I know what it is, but I'm not familiar with that quote from Lilo and Stitch. But yes, no, I know. I feel that a lot when I'm watching YouTube or things like that. That's why I wanted to specifically make sure that Table Talk, I think this is what in reference to making things with Table Talk and us, that we have a group of creators here. That was so important to me because you can't just tear down. You can't.
Well, and the evil and usually evil ideologies cannot create. And it's usually because it starts with criticism and maxes out on just the criticism. And in so doing, you simply are able to destroy what's there. You really can't create anything new. And I think that J.R.R. Tolkien says that that's one of his beliefs. And it's a belief that I share. Someone even mentioned one time in a book, the Nazi high command, all of them were failed artists, which I find to be very, very intriguing. That these are people that struggled to create things. And then they realized, hey, we're really good at destroying things instead. And, they created kind of a geopolitical fight club, a ethno-nationalistic fight club of their own in a sense. So, but it is interesting that that philosophy can trend toward just destruction and the inability to create.
I want to transition. I got one intermediate question, but with
Sure.
the idea to kind of transition to what actually happens in this movie. Because I've got some other thoughts on that, which are not unique to me, but I've been studying on and was like, oh my God, could that be true? But to go back to the very beginning, when at the beginning of the movie, you know, he's trapped, which is going to, you know, a flashback to the, you know, to the end of the movie where he's going to be. But he does say, which is very interesting, that I had a feeling this all had to do with a woman named Marla Singer.
Right.
Which, okay, he says that in the beginning. It comes early in the movie, very early in the movie, like 90 seconds or whatever it is. And then you pass into the rest of the story. The significance, so obviously he thought that at that moment, Marla Singer was incredibly significant to the whole arc.
She is.
They're here because of Marla Singer. Why?
Why is Marla Singer important?
No, well, why are they there because of Marla Singer?
Oh, well, because so another theme in the Heroine's Labyrinth, which is very strong in this one, is the broken truce. It's when the heroine turns against the native culture, and there's two, but one kind of plays out one way, but the major broken truce is when he turns against Project Mayhem. Tyler Durden, which is the masked Minotaur, his Project Mayhem, his actual marshaling of social forces in order to fight against the native culture. Now, Tyler Durden did this in service of Cornelius. Cornelius initially wanted to fight the native culture. He felt it was too confining. It was shallow consumerism. It couldn't give him a purpose. Tyler Durden comes in and says, "You don't like you don't like your native culture. You don't like consumerism. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to fight consumerism. We're going to go against all this." And Tyler takes it to the extreme, to the point where Project Mayhem overtakes Cornelius's life, just as bad as the corporate world did in the beginning. We know this because the home is battleground theme, where the home becomes compromised by the masked Minotaur. And that's exactly what happens in this film. Paper Street, there's some great monologue. There's a great monologue there. He's like, it had become a living, breathing thing. And they literally show almost the most fascist things you can think of, where there's a loudspeaker. "You are not a precious snowflake. You are part of the same compost heap." So the home is compromised by the masked Minotaur, which is an invasion of the inner sanctum at that point. So then Project Mayhem takes over from this headquarters, and Cornelius turns against this. That's the broken truce, and you usually get some level of law enforcement coming after you, and that's exactly what happens in this. Law enforcement, another place, another safe haven is a police station. In my book, The Heroine's Labyrinth, I discuss one of the most famous compromising of a safe haven in The Terminator. When she goes to a police station, even viewers at the time watch and like, well, that's a pretty safe place. The masked Minotaur of that film, which is The Terminator, smashes right in there and he assaults the police station. It's a famous scene. It's horrifying every time I watch it. Similar, the police are compromised. They are part of Project Mayhem. And even the police are after him at one point. He's trying to escape. So a great pursuit of the heroine is a typical feature of the broken truce. Why does he break the truce? There's two things. One, Robert Paulson is shot and killed. And in the story, one of the criteria, sometimes the broken truce is activated by a threat to the fragile power. Robert Paulson, Bob, old Moosey, is the fragile power of this story. And when the fragile power is threatened, the heroine, or Cornelius, changes his attitude about Project Mayhem. He starts castigating everyone in Project Mayhem as Cornelius, but he turns against it. Secondly, Tyler Durden, the masked Minotaur, begins to threaten Marla Singer. And that's the final straw. So Cornelius's motivation in turning against Project Mayhem is his desire to defend Marla Singer. So, and that's also a positive thing. He's turning against all this because he wants to protect Marla Singer. He tries to talk her out of it in the restaurant, and they have a back and forth. She describes him literally as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It fails there. He gives her money and says, go on this bus and, don't tell me where you're going, go camping. He literally is like, get off the grid for a couple of days. He's trying to protect Marla Singer. And then when he's confronted by the masked minotaur, Tyler Durden, in the hotel room, this echoes the broken truce. He goes, you broke your promise. You said you wouldn't talk to me about, or you wouldn't talk about me to her. So that's what pisses off Tyler Durden. And he's like, we have to kill her. She has to go. She knows too much, I think is what he says. So that's why they're there. Cornelius turns against Tyler in order to save Marla Singer. So structurally speaking, plot-wise, that is why they're there. His final defense. So Robert Paulson's dead. That's what turns him against it. But he could still save Marla, and he tries. And Tyler rejects that. And they end up fighting each other over this. So anyway, that is an issue. And if you think about the final scene, who's he with? Marla Singer. They have reconciled.
Okay. Yes, he's with Marla at the end. I can't drink any more wine. I'm gonna run and grab a beer.
You need a big pitcher of cheap beer, like in Loose Tavern.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can't drink. I can't drink wine anymore. So just one second. Let me grab something to drink. Right back.
Oh, yes. So Heath and I have worked out certain films to discuss, and Terminator is one that's actually coming up, I believe, soon. I think possibly this month. I can't remember. I think it is this month. But we decided, is it this month, Heath, that we're talking about Terminator?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Terminator is coming up. But we're also going to finish Star Trek. So we're going to finish our series on Star Trek soon, too. So, yes, Terminator's coming up in that. Okay, so, you're right. Yeah, Andrew says, for a low budget, the original Terminator, of course, we'll talk about that. But, yeah, it was low budget, but its story, man. That's going to be a great time.
Andrew, I totally agree. Even though the illusion is broken by modern standards, that scene where the tanker blows up and we think he's dead, and then he comes out. You get that huge stop motion, the machine coming up out of the fire. Even though it looks dated, it still captivates me.
Haunts me to this day. Really, it does.
It is. It's amazing.
Okay, so the reason I was asking about Marla, because here's the big question that I found: does Marla exist?
I believe so. But interesting theory. What's the theory that she doesn't exist?
Well, that's what I brought up because obviously, this is an old movie, so we're talking spoilers here. Obviously, the twist at the end is that Tyler Durden does not exist, and that actually the person that we're calling Cornelius is Tyler Durden. I think that is his name. I think his name is Tyler Durden.
Tyler Durden. Oh, okay.
I think the character we're calling Cornelius, that a lot of people call the narrator, I think his name is actually Tyler Durden.
Okay.
The reason I think that is because when Cornelius is trying to track down Tyler, he's looking at all of the plane tickets, and they say Tyler Durden.
Okay.
And so I think those were supposed to be plane tickets that his company had bought for him. Because he's flying around the country to different places. And so the company, if they're buying you plane tickets, wouldn't buy them in somebody else's name, or wouldn't buy it that you don't have. So I kind of got the feeling that his name was actually Tyler Durden.
Okay. My theory, and I'm not saying I'm right, and I'm not saying you're wrong. My theory was always that, like, if you're a split personality, like if I was going to develop a split personality, my instinct would be to create a new person with a different name. I want to be like, oh, hey, Doug, how you doing, Doug? Because I'm Doug. So to me,
I think
he must have faked his name or got a fake ID in order to get those plane tickets and stuff like that. That's what I always assumed anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you're right that in general, if you're going to develop, not that I know a whole lot about developing split personality disorder. Like when you're doing that, when I'm doing that, this is what I do. But it seems like that would be a lot more
Yes.
Yes, that's also true. Pre 9/11, the airlines were a lot more flexible about
Very
things.
flexible.
I've actually flown under a different name.
Have you? Was
Yep.
it Tyler Durden?
It was not Tyler Durden, but you're right that pre 9/11, it was pre 9/11, and I actually flew on a plane under a different name.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know how you explain it to a young person, right? Yeah, I'll tell you what it was, but on this subject, my uncle was going to fly down with his wife to on a business trip. It was a quick, like 2-day business trip. They needed to send him down to New Orleans. Quick flight from Birmingham to New Orleans with he and his wife. His wife's name is Carol. And so there were 2 tickets, and then his wife got sick, so she wasn't going to. It was just a quick trip. She got sick. She wasn't going to be able to make it. So it was actually around Christmas. And so my uncle said, "Hey, do you want to go down to New Orleans?" I was young. I mean, I was preteen, young. My first plane flight ever.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I mean, that sounds like fun. I just get to go on a plane trip. We're just going to hop down, do a couple things and be down in New Orleans and then fly back, in 48 hours or something like that. Sounds like a great time. I'll do it. But the ticket was for Carol.
Okay.
And his last name, let's say the last name is Roberts.
Okay.
For Carol Roberts. And then when we got to, so it was me and my uncle, and we showed up to go on the plane flight. And, the person checking us in. So this is for Rick and Carol, right? And my uncle went, my Uncle Rick went, no. Rick and Carl. He pointed at me. And he had told me, just if anybody asks you, your name is Carl.
Oh my God, that's great.
And so the flight attendant, right, this different time, or not the flight attendant, but whoever was booking went, "Oh, Carl, I'm sorry," and typed up a new ticket for Carl instead of Carol and handed it to me.
Wow.
So I have flown under the name Carl before, one of my aliases.
Carl Roberts. Could you wake up as someone else?
I didn't wake up as someone else, I don't think. But so when I encountered this idea,
I remember. Sorry, I just saw it.
Oh, are the armrest ashtrays?
Ashtrays.
Wow. Can you imagine having a bunch of people smoking on an airplane? I mean, that would have just...
Yeah, remember they would turn on the no smoking sign? I still remember people smoking in restaurants. They were smoking in bars until early 2000s, somewhere in there. But yeah, they took smoking out of pretty much everything now. Carl Schiff.
But so there is a theory that's going around that Marla does not exist either.
Okay.
And that's when I read this, I was like, oh my God, now I have to rewatch the movie. Because as I had watched the movie this time, I said I watched the movie a long time ago, knowing that, okay, there is no Tyler. And then when you watch the movie with all of that, with that knowledge, you start to see the weird ways that people interact with him, or don't interact with him in different scenes and things like that. You go, okay, he's not actually there. That he's not going on. But then it's also possible that Marla doesn't exist either. And that she is also an alternative personality. So that the narrator has multiple alternative personalities that he's dealing with throughout this entire movie. Because once you accept that he's an unreliable narrator, so that's why I was asking what actually happens during this movie. What actually physically happens? The superficial answer is almost everything happens in the movie, except for it's done by the narrator, who we were calling Cornelius, taking on the personality of Tyler Durden.
Right.
But then if you go down this particular rabbit hole, more and more of the characters become projections of his personality. And that includes Marla. And one of the things that, well, there's several, but when we're talking about, there's several things that point to this. One of them is the self-improvement is masturbation.
Right.
Okay. And so whenever Marla and Tyler are having sex,
right,
what is it that the narrator is doing? He's reading something, or he's working out, or he's doing some self-improvement technique. And so he's doing some kind of self-improvement listening to the sex.
Okay.
And they're never in the, of course, Tyler, except for the reason that they're together when they're having sex is because it's masturbatory on his part. And he's envisioning both of them. And this is a sexual fantasy that's happening. And then the other, they are not, Tyler and Marla are not in the same scene after that, or same room after that. Let's see what as the there's a lot on that. So in that case, she is a projection of him, and that changes up what the movie is about, because she does end up with he does end up with her instead of Tyler. So this is an accepting of the feminine. I thought when I watched this, he's dead. Now, I know there might be other like sequels and things like that, but when I watched this, he blows his head off to kill Tyler at the end. And there's a weird scene where he actually recovers and starts to get better.
Well, he shoots himself through the cheek. So
Yes.
it's a botched so yeah, he shoots, but it goes through his cheek. So he's damaged his mandible pretty severely, obviously, but he's not dead. He doesn't kill himself. It's more of a symbolic killing of Tyler Durden. It's actually the poisoned apple. It fits the criteria of the poisoned apple theme in this. But yeah, he's not dead. He just shoots it through his cheek.
So what's the significance of choosing Marla and to be with Marla? Because one of the ideas is that he actually has cancer. Let's see. Robert says, got me to rewatch the movie now. I'm sure other people will be doing
Oh, yeah.
this.
I mean, I almost plan on rewatching it again anyway.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Rewatch it with this in mind, because that's what I was doing when I was trying to rewatch it this last time. I was like, oh my God, I got to. That Marla is not real. So if you're asking what actually happens in this movie, Marla is not real. Bob is not real. Bob is another projection of his mind.
Okay.
Chloe is not real. She is a projection of his mind. All of the members of Project Mayhem are not real. And I think that could be the case, that they are not real. They are all in his mind. And I was wondering what the significance, and especially when this hit me, when I found this out, I was like, what's the significance of being on Paper Street?
I have a theory on that too, but go ahead.
Okay, so people have been saying, as I've been reading, that architects will call a paper street a street which they have in their blueprints, but has not actually been built.
Oh, okay.
So that, according to this theory, is telling you that whatever the house on Paper Street doesn't exist. And so they're not actually going to a physical house. That physical house is a representation of his mind and the people who are living in his mind. According to this theory, when he tells Tyler, I should go get a hotel, that is actually what he does. What he does is he goes to the hotel, and everything else is this hallucination of what is happening in his mind. And when Marla tries to commit suicide, because Marla lives in a hotel. So Marla,
an apartment complex, I thought.
No, it's a hotel.
Okay.
It is definitely a hotel. There's a hotel sign outside, and so they go in and out of a hotel.
Oh, okay.
So she's living in a hotel, and that's where Cornelius, the narrator, may be living, and he's overdosing on the drugs that the doctor prescribed to him, that the doctor did prescribe to him. And so when Marla's trying to commit suicide, he's committing suicide because he and Marla are the same people.
So yeah, she said it was Xanax. A stomach full of Xanax is what she said.
So like I was looking at this right here. So rule 1, we'll just go through this real quick. Marla Singer is not real. Marla and Tyler dress alike. They both smoke, and they both have this. So Tyler's hairstyle is styled and worn almost identically to Marla's throughout the movie. Marla and Tyler are both seen wearing a similar faux coat, wearing sunglasses, almost identical rings, and they're smoking. Marla and Jack dress alike. At the end, you're seeing him choose one of his personalities. And this is the embrace of the feminine. because look at how they're dressed similarly at the end here, because he's even had his pants taken away. Marla has no reflection, and neither does Tyler. So when you're looking at reflection scenes, neither Marla nor Tyler have reflections. We can see a scene of this when Tyler is saving Marla from suicide and goes to her hotel. They both walk by a convex mirror, but neither one of them has a reflection. Marla takes control of Jack in the laundromat. That's an interesting scene too, because she steals the pants and then goes and sells the pants. She's taking his pants from him, and he ends up with no pants at the beginning of the movie. At the end of the movie, of course, we have the bridesmaid dress as well. That's interesting. Let's see. Marla even physically grabs Jack by the testicles right when he asks, "Are you selling clothes?" To which Marla replies, "Yes, I'm selling some clothes." Tyler takes over Jack on the airplane. So he's very associated with Marla. According to this theory, or a part of this theory, is that Jack has testicular cancer. He's got cancer and he's dealing with being emasculated. And that's why he's got this feminine character in his mind that he's starting to identify with. But then Jack comes and takes over on the airplane. It's called a changeover. The movie goes on and the audience has no idea. So, obviously Jack is not on that airplane with him. Whether or not the lady he was talking to previously was, that's unknown. Testicles and balls. Marla is Jack post-testicular cancer. And interestingly, right here, this points out that there are balls in a cage behind him when he shows up. Yeah, fixation on testicles throughout this entire movie. If Jack is Marla, it makes sense that Bob and Marla are both members of the testicular cancer group. Jack feels emasculated. At first, he only feels moderately insecure, so he imagines his Bob there to help him cope with his insecurity and anxiety about his actual testicular cancer, according to this idea. Oh yeah. Now this one, big rubbery one. I had associated that when I read that, or when I was watching that, I guess in my mind that came across blubbery. And so I was associating that with crying. But he says that this as the big rubbery one. So what is the big rubbery one? It's Marla's sex toy. And this is one of the weird parts of the film that as I was watching through again, I was like, what is going on here? Because you've got the scene in the beginning when he loses his luggage. And the reason that his luggage is gone is because it's vibrating. And then you have this discussion about the dildo.
That's right.
Right? And he's like, I don't own a dildo.
He's like, oh.
But who does? Marla. And so according to this theory, Marla's the one who packed that suitcase.
So go up to that picture. What is that picture showing?
She's holding her rubber dildo. And then later you see it on her desk, or on her chest of drawers.
Right. That one was obvious.
That one's obvious. So according to this theory, many of the times that he is out at night, Tyler, not Tyler as in Brad Pitt's character, but the narrator, he's embodying Marla. And he's living Marla's life. And so he was Marla when he packed his suitcase to go on that trip, which is what put the vibrating dildo in it. Because that seems to have happened, because he's talking to another security guard. Oh, but that's never really explained. Like, why would that be going on and cause him to lose his luggage? And he's like, he doesn't understand it. Like, there's some kind of vibrating thing in my luggage? That doesn't make any sense. But it would make sense if he were embodying Marla when he packed that suitcase to take, and then there could be a vibrating dildo in the luggage. Did you ever find it odd when Jack is hugging Bob for the first time? He says, "Strangers with this kind of honesty make me go a big rubbery one."
I just took that as like weak in the knees, vulnerable, disarmed.
See, I took that as crying. But here we see it. There it is next to Brad Pitt's character right there. So yeah, the vibrating. Yeah, what was vibrating in the suitcase anyway? This is one of the strongest points for Marla's non-existence. The most interesting part about the scene is that Jack is utterly confused. If he had been the person to actually pack his bags, then surely he would have understood what could be vibrating in the suitcase. The security guard says 9 times out of 10 it's an electric razor. But Jack continues to look at the security guard confused and says, "My suitcase was vibrating," implying he has no idea what could possibly be the cause. However, if Jack is actually Marla, then Marla is likely the one who packed the bags, which means there is actually a dildo in the luggage. Jack acts totally confused about this because he himself has no idea that he is Marla. Thinking about it, the dildo is even sitting on top of the dresser, and Marla packed it. When she walks out into I was watching carefully the scenes where she walks out into the street, completely unconcerned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would make sense if she was not there. She walks out there. Why do all the cars pass by her? Because she's not actually there.
Well, they slam on the brakes.
Now, in one scene, they brake, but in the others, they don't, which I think is interesting, too. So, I mean, that goes back. In other ones, they're just passing by her. Marla and Jack live in a hotel. The Paper Street house does not exist. So the house Tyler lives in, where Jack moves into Project Mayhem uses as a base, does not exist. Equally interesting is Marla does not have an apartment or house. She lives in a hotel. Let's see what this right here. Yeah, the Hotel Lindy in Bristol Hotel. So I was watching it with all of this in mind. He does not go to the Paper Street house because it does not exist. Tyler and Marla's residence are the exact same residence in that there's only the hotel that Jack is living in. They call Jack, who we're calling Cornelius, is living, but he's imagining 2 separate places for his 2 separate alternative personalities in here. The personalities are losing their compartmentalization. That's why Jack starts getting threatened by Marla. That I came in, she's coming back, I've got to take her out. Recycle your animals.
How does that play in?
Well, okay, so this is also because Bob does not exist either. Bob is just one of the alternate personalities. So Bob is even referred to as the Big Moosey. This explains your recycle your animals bumper sticker on the Lincoln Town car. Tyler and Jack crash with 2 Project Mayhem members on the back. In the back, Tyler refers to Marla as a predator posing as a house pet, and yet another nail in the coffin is Marla comparing her death rattle to a hairball. Bob is even referred to as the Big Moosey. We even see that Jack gets off the bus at the Paper Street station. The advertisement on the bus, which is not clearly visible without adjusting levels, hints at this right before he enters Paper Street, where the animals are. Jack leaves Marla's place before examining her. After examining her for breast cancer, he runs into Bob. We can see written on the wall behind Jack the phrase "myself" 4 times in a column.
I did notice that.
In other shots, we can see the full writing actually says, "I love myself."
Correct.
Why does Bob appear at this point when we haven't seen him since the beginning of the movie? He's appearing because Jack just saved Marla, and now Bob wants to be saved as well. So, Tyler saves Marla from committing suicide. In addition, there's this. In this theory, and with only circumstantial evidence, I admit, but it makes sense. The Xanax Marla tries overdosing with is the Xanax the doctor prescribed Jack at the beginning of the film, which we never see happen. Jack requests 2 pills, one of which is an antioxidant-like Xanax. Left in the copier. Yeah, he does not. So in this, he does not receive this phone call. This is another situation where he pretends to receive a phone call or thinks he's receiving a phone call, but he does not. Further confusing his boss there, because if Marla isn't real, then the phone never rings, which means Jack said something he was certainly disturbing to his boss. And even more disturbing is that he just picked up a telephone that didn't even ring and then told his boss that it was important that he had to take the call. Self-improvement is masturbation. This is a big one. There are a ton of references to masturbation and fucking yourself throughout the film. The most notable scene is when Tyler and Jack board the bus and Tyler says self-improvement is masturbation, now self-destruction, and trails off. What he's supposed to say is masturbation is self-improvement, now self-destruction is the answer. Now, Fast forward to when Tyler saves Marla, and they are now in the habit of constantly having sex with each other. If masturbation is self-improvement, and Marla, Tyler, and Jack are all the same person, then Jack is masturbating during those scenes. He's doing sit-ups. He's reading his reader over here. So that's what's going on, and neither one of those people actually exist. And this one's weird. Oh my God, infectious human waste. Like when we start getting dark about what could be going on in this movie, infectious waste is what they are getting. That is the human body fat, and that's what Marla calls herself. When Tyler has gone to save Marla, we see her yelling at the paramedics and emergency responders that are coming to save her that she's infectious human waste. Even more interestingly, she's speaking about herself in the third person. This makes perfect sense. If Marla is Tyler in this scene, we're actually watching Jack running away from the hotel and speaking about Marla. She's infectious human waste. And that's also, man, get this. This is going dark. This is also why Tyler, when he's having sex with Marla, is wearing rubber gloves. The same rubber gloves that he uses to make the soap, which implies that the sex scenes with Marla are actually Cornelius masturbating with the fat. Because Marla is the infectious human waste. So, whoa. So that I was trying to watch this entirely again, thinking that most of the characters are actually all in his head. And man, I think that could be right.
Well, I would say that is a pretty unique theory that's in line with the split personality thing, but it would definitely change the entire meaning of the movie.
It would, yes, it totally
But it
would.
also never reveals that. Like, it shows scenes of him with Tyler, for example, like when he's sitting at Paper Street and he's like, we need to do this again. And he hands him the beer. It shows all the scenes with him actually being that guy or being by himself and dropping it.
Yes.
So they make a clear effort to establish that it's possible for him to be Tyler and imagine himself. They even have dialogue. Like, sometimes you thought you were me. Other times you thought, he'd be like, sometimes you think I speak for you. So it shows, it refilms certain scenes from the movie showing that it was Cornelius there, not Tyler, or that Tyler wasn't there. And like when he handed him the beer bottle, he just dropped the beer. They didn't do any of that with Marla Singer. So the film makes zero case that that's true. It just is something that you are, or this person at least is backing into and saying, technically it's possible.
Well, it doesn't, I don't know if the film, of course, according to this, it is saying that the film does tell you this. But what it doesn't do is make it explicit. It ended up making it explicit that he and Tyler are the same person. It didn't make it explicit that he and Marla are the same person, or that he and Bob are the same person, or that all the people in Project Mayhem are projections of his self as well, and that none of this is actually happening. So you think that basically everything happened as the movie portrays, except for Tyler and the narrator the same person.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I originally read it too, but now I'm not sure. Now,
that's a very interesting theory. It's almost like saying the whole movie's a dream, which you're not really supposed to do that. If everything in the movie is fake, then I don't know. I feel like that's too much of a delusion to where it almost gets loose to the point of it being, inconsequential. If everything's made up, then what are we watching here?
That's why I said, like, what actually happened? That was the question I came up to. Then what actually are we watching? Because that makes it a movie about trying to grapple with death. That if you think that, man, this guy is dying, he's got testicular cancer, he's going to or did have his testicles removed, he's dealing with feminization, he's dealing with death. Those are all themes that, man, I did not pick up on.
in that interview with Joe Rogan, did the author say any of this?
I was looking for that because he comes up with some. He also talks about some dark stories, which I love. But I mean, he talks about some dark stories and writing and what it means to write and go someplace. He didn't specifically. I was waiting for that. That's why I was like, oh my god, I have to listen to at least something by the author to see what he was saying. He never actually addressed that, and I was wondering also what. Of course, this is just about the movie, which can be a different story from the novel as well. If there was something in the novel that came up, but he was trying to tell. He said that he was trying to tell a story that appealed to men. He was explicit about that. The author was saying that there are a lot of stories about or for women that deal with women's journeys or travel.
Interesting, because this is a Heroine's Labyrinth story.
Well, that's actually extra interesting right there. Man, we need to have him on the show and talk to him about that, because he was very specific in saying there's a lot of novels out there that deal with women and their attempt to get through the world. And he said there are only a few of them out there for men. And he named a few of them, including the Dead Poets Society, which is it's been a while since I've seen, but I need to watch that one again. But he was saying there are a few that talk about men. And he was specifically trying to write this about men. And so that's interesting that if you do it through a heroine's journey, a heroine's labyrinth story structure, that's extra interesting.
Well, because a lot of stories, just like with the hero's journey, a lot of stories will skip certain parts of it or modify a certain part beyond recognition. The Fight Club hits every trope. With only a few that are kind of, loose, but it hits every trope to some extent. And that's rare.
Let me see if I can find which ones he, they can. That's true. I was no lit major, but isn't all of Hemingway about men making their way? I'm not even sure that he would deny that. But he was talking about that as in late 1990s. Hemingway is not exactly current literature even then. At the moment.
Well, that's true, but a lot of the male-centric stories tend to be warrior tropes, which is and not all, by the way, not all. That's why there are plenty of stories with male leads that do still follow the heroine's labyrinth. Rambo, First Blood, actually follows the heroine's labyrinth. The Dark Knight follows the heroine's labyrinth. The Godfather, to a large extent, follows the heroine's labyrinth. What's another one? The Game with Michael Douglas, perfect heroine's labyrinth model. So it can be both, but I think the big popular, big hard-hitting stories like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, those tend to be warrior tropes, hero's journey, classic stories. So maybe he was saying he wanted to do something that wasn't within the warrior trope model, that he felt dealt with the same existential issues that some of these hero-centric stories follow. Maybe that's what he meant. But if so, then he did follow the right model.
Well, I'll see if I can.
My take is that that's a fun theory. One of those theories that are hard to let go of, especially if you could find some of those connections. But if, and I like that theory tries to address it through the idea that this guy had cancer and had to deal with it from two different angles. But I don't know if that's what the author intended. Now, keep in mind, there is another rail to this. Sometimes authors project things into the story. That's my whole theory. That's the whole theory about the hero's journey, the heroine's labyrinth, tropes, archetypes, that people are projecting things into their stories unconsciously. So it's possible that this author projected certain things into this story unconsciously that left a trail that this other guy was able to track down an alternate theory that seems to hold up. But if everything in the movie is fake, then I don't know if you have much of a movie at that point. Like for example, if you ended the movie by saying that Marlowe was fake, Paper Street was fake, Project Mayhem was fake, like if you ended the story along that theory's premise, this movie would be rejected because, like, if you actually film scenes where he's like, "Oh my God, Marla was fake too," and "Oh my God, there's no such paper street." If the lead character goes through an epiphany where everything that you just watched was fake, that's the same as saying it was all a dream, which is like the absolute cardinal rule number one you can't do as a writer. And if he filmed it that way, this movie probably would have been rejected.
Well,
So-
but see that, but it could be that you're right. So we're not going to film it that way. We're just going to have the twist being that it's Tyler Durden, but all of the clues might be there to tell you that it's more than that. That we're not going to tell you explicitly. We'll just be explicit about Tyler not being there.
So, that's
but
possible.
We won't be explicit about nobody else being there.
However,
and that it's an embracing. I thought at the end that he was dead and taking Marla.
That's more of a Birdman trope. I can't wait to talk about Birdman. But my thing is this, though. If you take all the time to put all of those Easter eggs in to be that deep and that meta, with balls in a cage, like all those things, all that symbolism, like if you go that deep with it, to that extent, to that breadth, someone in the filmmaking process is going to mention that. I feel like someone's going to say, "Man, do you want to know what really happened in Fight Club? Check out this, check out this." There'd be a featurette or something.
Well, that's why I was trying to watch it again, because it's on retrospect, when you're watching it through the second time, it becomes clear that Tyler is not actually in the scenes. That the things that you might not pick up on, like, well, for instance, the lack of reflection, or something that are all there in the scene, or the sticker that says this doesn't take incoming calls,
right?
Or there are all these things there that tell you that he's not actually there, and even the way that actors interact, when he's shooting them, and there are other people in the scene, the actors are not, even with body motion, like acknowledging Tyler.
Yeah, well, there's that one scene where he's at the doctor and he's like, "Sometimes Tyler spoke for me." And Tyler's like in the background, out of focus. "I fell down some stairs." So he's got the thing. He's like, "I fell down some stairs."
So what I was trying to watch again, and I said, I'm going to get about 70 or 80% of the way through it, and I'm going to do it again. But I was wondering if they use those same kinds of techniques with the other characters, because that would be a tell. Like, do other people acknowledge Marla? Oh, it doesn't really seem like it. Do other people acknowledge Bob? Like, or do they only interact with him?
Well,
I was trying to look for those things as I was watching.
So there is a scene, and I even pointed it out because I thought it was always funny, where they're at a support group, and it's when Cornelius first confronts Marla. She's over like grabbing a donut, and he's walking up to her, and there's this dude walking up in the background, staring at Marla like he's about to, because you're supposed to split up into pairs, partners. And this guy's kind of slowly making his way over to Marla, and then when she starts talking to Cornelius, he kind of veers off and goes a different direction. I always got a kick out of that because I was like, look at that dude in the background. That like weak ass guy is like coming in. And that's just the first thing that came to mind. But that's one example I'm looking for. Yeah, in one example, that's one example of where I saw someone reacting specifically to Marla, or at least I thought he was, clearly. But yeah, like in a lot of these scenes, and this is where it can be a little bit of a, an issue where if, like when she's selling clothes, you can just say, well,
yeah,
or
is he selling the clothes?
Right.
That's what's going on. Is there's a laundromat, but again, it could have just been him alone there talking to the pawn shop owner. Yeah, it could have been. So I don't know. Now I can't get this out of my head.
Well, I'll rewatch it and see what, and I'll watch specifically to see if I can find any disruption to that. But I think that's fun. I don't want to be like a downer on this because I love theories like that. By the way, I actually love those. And I would actually do a whole stream to talk about that, like purely just on that one level. That'd be fun. My thing is structurally, though, from a storytelling standpoint, it gets really, really muddy. And it gets to be so monolithic in terms of what's happening that the whole thing is the whole movie is kind of a stunt. Doesn't mean it doesn't count. Doesn't mean it's not good or not possible. But it certainly breaks up the storytelling in a way that's hard to follow. And I guess I would have just liked someone, if they were in on it, who put all this together, to have said something about it. And maybe they have, by the way. It's possible that there is something out there from the filmmakers where this is presented. But that theory is not dismissible out of hand. There's a lot of stuff in there that was very compelling, specifically the idea of testicular cancer. It explains why she would be in there. It explains her comment when she's like, I you still have your balls and I don't. So a lot of the focuses that even I mentioned myself before you even said this still fit along with that. I even said that stealing body fat, the infectious human waste, is a physical part of woman. It's, just like Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs takes their skin. That's physical woman he's putting on himself. In this case, I said the body fat actually represents physical woman being stolen. So when you, in this guy's theory, he's saying it means the same thing, but the underlying meaning is different, that it actually is like in that one scene you said that gross, why he's wearing gloves. It's still, in his theory, symbolic of physical womanhood. That is, he steals it and then uses it for that. That's pretty gross. But
the symbols would still be there. The
symbolism is the same.
Would still be there. It would just change what the physicality, what physically happened in the film.
Right.
So I don't know. So I put the link to that if people want to read that. And you can actually, if you look up even on YouTube and other places like "Does Marla exist?" people can go through that. People can go through that theory, and also they'll talk about whether or not Bob exists and whether or not this is all about actually dealing with death. Which I mean,
it could be. It's not a bad theory, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that if true.
Oh. So what did you have for the meaning of paper street? Because I didn't know. I looked that up, and then that's another reason I got that. So paper street, according to architects, is a street that doesn't exist. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. But what did you have for paper street?
So the house on Paper Street is the captivity bargain. Okay. It's so the captivity bargain is something that the heroine accepts willingly. That's one of the key facets, and it is a form of captivity. That house is terrible. It's like a prison cell. He sleeps on a mattress on the ground. The water barely works. I mean, he even says, "What a shithole." That's his comment about this house. So this is clearly a terrible form of like existence or living. There's no real good material comforts. He goes into a long. He does describe it, the smell anyway, as a hamster cage. It's one of the worst places possible, and he goes there willingly. He chooses to go there. Even in the unschizophrenic form, he went into a squatted house. From the schizophrenic form, he was invited to Tyler's house, and Tyler was squatting there. But this is a captivity bargain. He goes from his condo to this terrible world in which he willingly surrenders all of his goods. So this is a captivity bargain. And like I said with in Silence of the Lambs, when it was a quid pro quo, this for that, it's an exchange. Or in Little Mermaid, I mentioned the voice. She signs a contract. So the captivity bargain or contract signed on paper. So to me, it's a paper agreement that you're signing. You're signing away. So I'm not saying that's why they did it, but it's interesting that Paper Street is what this contract where it leads from his material lifestyle to this almost form of imprisonment without any material comforts.
Andrew says paper is used to be slang for money. Not sure if it works either way, but that's what I think of when I hear the term. So Paper Street would be Money Street because that's where they're manufacturing and they're making the soap. So that's right. Three different uses then, because I was like, what does it mean to be Paper Street? So the first thing I came up with was the people who are referencing it's an architectural term for a street that doesn't exist. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's telling you this isn't here. But it could be the contract that you're bringing up and money that Andrew is
the idea of a paper contract which is intriguing to me because this is the captivity bargain. This is the contract where the heroine or the lead in this case goes into captivity willingly, into this place. And there's a lot here to suggest that this is more of a prison than an actual house. Yeah, captivity paper, like a paper contract. Yeah. So in structural terms, this is a beautiful captivity bargain.
John says, I've always heard of paper streets being Heath's definition. That was one behind my house. There was one behind my house growing up. Yeah.
Oh, paper street.
If it doesn't exist, that's fascinating. If we were watching something, but it's fascinating that if it works, but it didn't actually happen physically. That's still something.
Yeah, I mean,
if it still manages to have meaning, you still have to imbue it with meaning.
Well, and believe it or
obviously,
not,
this movie does have meaning.
Believe it or not, both theories do not invalidate each other. Even if this is a manifestation of his imagination, it's still a captivity bargain structurally. Going from the condo to this place is still a captivity bargain. So in that sense, the word paper would have a dual meaning. One, paper street, a fictitious street. Two, paper contract for the captivity bargain, which as far as my interpretation goes, is an unconscious projection from the writer. You know, that's what he would call it. Because he can call it anything. It could be anything.
Okay, you talked about, I think you just actually talked about what you said the soap represents, which is taking a woman physically.
So part of the idea of a sacred fire is an attractive force and a creative power. Those are the dual twin forces archetypally that form the sacred fire of the heroine. And in several stories, I've noticed that this intangible quality is something the masked minotaur tries to capture. Why does the masked minotaur choose this woman? Why is the masked minotaur trying to capture and monopolize the heroine, which happens all the time? Why is the evil stepmother so fixated on Cinderella? Why does Buffalo Bill or Hannibal Lecter really want out of Clarice Starling? In Little Red Riding Hood, he wants to eat her. Physically eat her. In some cases it's pure sexual attraction. He's attracted to her, he wants her. But in most stories, we see that this attraction goes to obsessive levels. There's a lot of women out there. You could be attracted to several. Why this one? Why can't this guy get over this one? There's something there. There's something archetypally speaking that the masked minotaur wants to seize. And my theory is that it's the feminine essence itself that is trying to be taken. And this movie has scenes of the masked minotaur stealing a physical attribute of women, which is that's a liposuction clinic. It's part of a woman's body that's literally being taken out and discarded. And he goes in and he steals it and he uses it to make soap. So it's actually a theft of a part of a woman's body in a physical sense. And it's totally disgusting. By the way, that scene where it gets caught on the barbed wire.
Oh, yeah.
I can't, no matter what, I always get grossed out by that. But this theme is repeated in Fight Club. The effort to steal some part of a woman that's no different than Buffalo Bill trying to steal women's skin. The examples that I've been using, Ursula stealing her voice, Ariel's voice. So it is repeated. And in this case, the excuse is, or the reason is, by making soap, you can also create a byproduct, which is nitroglycerin, and then you can sell the soap and make money. It helps to fund your project. So the theme is repeated. It's just fascinating that it happens in Fight Club and that there's a direct example for it. And it's rare. Think of how hard that is to physically stealing something from a woman, like Maleficent, which we talked about. The masked minotaur is Stefan, and he physically cuts off her wings. He steals part of her body there as well. So the theme does repeat, and it's a hard theme to create. And that's why I think I'm so fascinated when I see how it's actually done and how many times they do it.
Doesn't the stepmother, like Maleficent, also want to? No, wait, that's Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, that's Sleeping Beauty. I guess I went to Snow White, with the stepmother wanting to eat her heart and lungs.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty dark. But there you go. I mean, you're getting into some aspect of a woman that's being treated physically but what they're really after is some feminine essence. Even the evil stepmother, who's jealous of Sleeping Beauty for being the fairest of, is that right? The fairest of them all? Is that Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella? Why am I getting mixed up?
Yeah, I know. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? That's Snow White, right?
Yes, that is Snow White.
Yes.
So, but again, that is a feminine essence. That's a feminine quality that drives the vanity. So there's still a desire by the mass minotaur to capture that. And it usually doesn't mean kill. It usually doesn't mean kill. It usually means to capture or convert. And you get images of the unconscious heroine all the time. And in this one, the person who's the heroine is Cornelius. And he's talking about narcolepsy, the idea of the unconscious. So those themes are still in here. Can you fall asleep and wake up and become somebody else? Like he talks about that. He describes those sacanals, which we just lipstick, red sacanals. So there's definitely those themes of feminine essence, unconsciousness throughout Fight Club. And that's what I think Marla Singer embodies. It doesn't mean that it invalidates the theory that she's a manifestation of his mind. It actually still works, but I would have to rewatch it. I'd have to rewatch it to see how that would work as a offshoot of his personality. Structurally, though, it still works.
Yeah, I was thinking of this, that in the 1957 version, in the 1857 version of Snow White, the stepmother does not ask the huntsman to bring the little girl's heart. So it's the heart in the film. She asked for Snow White's lungs and liver. So you are taking
still a physical attribute.
Yeah. But so taking so I had forgotten the heart was there, but I was thinking, oh yeah, in an earlier version, the hunter then fools her by bringing the lungs and heart of a young boar instead, and she boils them in salt and eats them.
Yeah, don't you think that's weird? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it's unusual, but what I'm saying is it's unusual that these would repeat like this. And even in Fight Club, you have them stealing the physical bodily fat of women in that scene where they're running into the clinic and they're stealing it. So again, we see the theme of taking something physically, and even, like I said, even Red Riding Hood, the wolf eats her. That's, you can't get any more physical than that.
This is getting close to the end of all of my notes. I was wondering if we were like, I mean, there are other things. If you have other things to talk about too, I was wondering if we needed to get into Chloe or if we just need to not do that.
I thought that was funny. I thought that was a pretty funny scene, but they do get in the heart chakras there. And Marla starts to invade that space as well as the like cycle. That is a case for the other guy's theory, because she's beginning to invade his mind,
Well, right. Because, like what's going on there? It's because I thought she had cancer too.
She does. Chloe?
Andrew says a foreign substance interest into our what is this? Into our precious bodily fluids with a knowledge of the individual, certainly without any choice. That way, your hardcore. That's the way your hardcore commie works.
For what is that? Essence reminds me of Dr. Strangelove monologue.
Essence reminds me of Dr. Strangelove monologue by the crazy military general. A foreign substance is introduced into our body, into our precious bodily fluids without the knowledge of the individual, certainly without any choice. That's the way your hardcore commie works. I don't avoid women, but I do deny them my essence. Not a same thing, but yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, I mean, the feminine essence is a thing. It's a creative force, or it's an attractive force and a creative power. And in this case, the creative power, I mean, they create soap. They create something with it. So anyway, I just find, and Marla Singer is, I always look for aspects of creativity, creation, and artistry. I always look for symbolism for that. And Marla Singer is a form of artist. So it is a creative, it is a word that denotes a creative endeavor.
So there is also on that link that I shared the idea that Chloe doesn't have cancer; she has AIDS. That she's an AIDS patient.
Oh, I thought they said cancer.
They're at the Partners in Positivity meeting.
Okay.
So it's almost a universally idea held that Chloe has cancer. There's a lot of evidence to suggest she instead is HIV positive and is suffering from AIDS. But she isn't a she at all, since Chloe likely doesn't exist and is just another figment of his imagination.
Oh, is that on the theories page?
Yeah. So that one, go there if you're there, because this also explains the idea of Chloe and what she says she has. I had to look this one up too. This is also what got me down this line of thought, because I was like, she says because she wants to get laid before she dies. I mean, this is also a pretty grim part of this movie. Like, lots of this is going to do that. But she says that she's got amyl nitrate as one of the things she's got at the house. Like, I don't know, is that what women tell you they have it there? Was that a
I think
pickup
that's
line,
I think that's for anal.
Right. Yeah. It's so it says that. I was like, what? Because I had to look that up, and if you look that up, you go into, okay, wait, what are we actually going? What is that? So because they got pornographic movies, lubricants, and then amyl nitrate, and I was like, well, what is that? And so this is a laxative for or something for smoothing muscles. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Poppers.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go down a different line with what is going on there with her. So that's on that link too. And again, the idea that it might be in his mind, and we might be dealing with homosexuality involved in this. What is last thing? I don't know what. I have no idea what this is. What is the significance of the penguin?
Well, I do mention totem animals.
Okay.
But it doesn't, I don't know if it fits here. Yeah, I've wondered that for years, even before I was writing The Heroine's Labyrinth and all this, what that penguin signified. To me, they just said go into a cave.
Go into a cave.
And his cave is an ice cave. So I feel like the penguin simply matches the cave that he imagined. I mean, it seems pretty archetypal in terms of like random figments that might come up into the imagination. Even the word slide, because penguins will slide. That's kind of their thing. So it seems to me almost like the kind of random thing you would think of in like a drug-induced, not stupor, but in a condition where you're coming up and suddenly penguins and sliding and cave. So I don't know. It seems pretty random to me. Marla Singer's there. So I don't know. I don't have a great answer for what the penguin signifies.
I didn't. I wrote that down. I was like, penguin ? What is that? And that was one of my last notes. That was actually fairly early because it's earlier on the film. I wrote down.
Yeah.
And I couldn't come up with any type of. I couldn't come up with an understanding of a meaning about exactly what the penguin was supposed to represent. I mean, go and get in touch with your animal or something. Why is it an ice cave with a penguin? I didn't come up with anything.
Well, the mass minotaur and the beast as ally usually have an animal totem, but I don't think that applies here because I don't think that that's what this represents. To me, he's in his heart chakra, and it's just showing that his heart is cold, icy cold heart. So his cave is an ice cave, and I don't like if I tell you right now, think of a cave. I think 99% of us are thinking of a regular brown stone earth cave, stalactites, stalagmites. He's picturing an ice cave. So I do think it's an atypical vision of a cave. One that's specific to just very icy, cold, frigid detachment. But yeah, it's self-projecting detachment. We just said the word at the same time. So that's what I think it represents. And the only animal that would be in this cave, because she says, find your power animal. What kind of an animal would you find in an ice cave? Well, either a polar bear, Siberian tiger, maybe, penguin. But that list narrows down pretty quick.
If you have just a few more minutes, Doug, actually, what I think we should do, since you're talking about this being such an archetypically or a story that conforms to the Heroine's Labyrinth, even though it is a male protagonist, could you bring up that spiral and then point out some things on the spiral that are that? I think that would
Yeah,
be
let
really
me
useful
see if
for
I could
people.
do that.
That would be. I think that'd be a great way to wrap up here.
Now this is
And a great contribution.
Let me see if I can bring this up. This is incomplete. Let me share this real quick. Present. Share screen. Share that, and then I can zoom in on it once I see.
All right.
Okay, so this was the symbolism that we were using, and that it's not done yet. This is just where we're at, but this is the list. And what's interesting is they go out of order, but not by much. I actually wrote down as it goes in order, like what each thing means. And it follows mostly Act 1 is the same, Act 2 is the same, Act 3 is the same, but the order changes within each act for the most part. But it sticks to most of them. And as far as I could tell, the labyrinth was the native culture, the system of rules that the heroine detests. In this case, the heroine would be Cornelius. And in this case, it was clearly corporate America, consumerism.
Hang on, I got a spiral here. Hey, let me
okay.
see if people can see this better. This one right here.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the one I wanted to use. My publishing consultant didn't want to use that one.
Oh no,
really? Well, it's interesting that this one's so useful in this context because that's the whole point of having it in the book. I might even remake a case that this one is still one we should consider. So yeah, the labyrinth, you have the heroine entering the labyrinth, and the labyrinth is a system of rules. I mean, I can read I have what's called the anatomy of an archetype, which breaks down the similarities, regardless of the movie or story, what is similar in terms of a pattern. And for the labyrinth, it is, whoops, I'm zoomed in over here. Let me back out of this. A set of restrictions or rules based on cultural expectations. Very clearly, Cornelius is bothered by this. This is what starts most of his diatribes in the film, aimed at corporate America. The heroine has aspirations that conflict with these rules. The labyrinth often appears to be game-like with a win or lose scenario. Follow the rules and you'll be rewarded. If you break the rules, you'll be punished. There's usually a secondary character that represents the voice of wisdom or nonconformity. We'll get into that later. Usually includes labyrinthine imagery if it's in a film. So in this case,
I would say that matches. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and even in the book, let me see if I can find it. Corporate. I even say that's Barbie. So it even says, luckily, okay, so it says the term culture, this is right out of my book. Culture does not always have to mean ethnic, national, or religious traditions either. Culture may also be corporate, professional, institutional, local, family, interest group, or even a friendship circle. Anything that seeks some sort of continuity of something valuable to the group. So he's clearly anti-consumerism, anti-cultural. So there is a tension between him and the native culture. There's no doubt about that in this movie. So the labyrinth, as portrayed structurally, is the corporate culture, the consumerism that we talked about. He's very much against that. He doesn't like it. And the masked minotaur, now in this movie, there is a dual role. The masked minotaur and the beast as ally are both Tyler Durden structurally. In fact, you could say that what makes this movie interesting is that the beast as ally, when unmasked, when the minotaur is unmasked, it was the beast as ally. That was the disguise. But they both fulfill all the criteria for both of the archetypes. So for the masked minotaur, a homegrown member of the native culture, the mask of the minotaur is often a pleasing human face.
Definitely Brad Pitt.
Yeah, so he's a good-looking guy, right? The minotaur is usually duplicitous, being half benevolent, half tyrannical. He clearly is that. may include an animal totem, which includes his beast half personality. I did not find an animal totem for him. I could be wrong, and I don't think the penguin matches this at all. The Minotaur is often disguised as a social apex character. I don't think he was that in this. He has usually mastered the cultural game rules.
When you first see him, though, his clothing, I mean, he's wearing expensive clothing. He's in the airport. I mean, doing sophisticated kind of things. I mean, where would you expect to see a social apex kind of male clothed like that, dressed up, doing business stuff in an airport? I mean, that's not completely out of this.
He looks like a male model, a celebrity. So I guess in the sense that it's Brad Pitt, you know, in almost like model clothes. Yeah. So I guess he is social ape. I guess he's social apex. I guess he is. It's hard to argue against it now that I think about it. He's just not a CEO or a general, you know, so he doesn't have an official role, but just in pure social terms, he's a social apex character. He would be the alpha male in almost any party you would throw him in. So he's got that. So I guess he is a social apex character in that term. He's clearly like a celebrity, you know, model type guy. The Minotaur has mastered some sort of game rules. The Minotaur tries to capture or possess the heroine, which in this case is Cornelius, and he does attempt to do that by the end of the story. And that Minotaur may be hidden in society wearing the disguise of an ordinary person. So those are the features of the masked Minotaur. Duplicitous, you know, being half really helpful, half really tyrannical, and disguised. And in this case, the disguise is special because he's a figment of the imagination. He's disguised in a perfect schizophrenic sense. So, and then anyway, and I even include Fight Club in this section as example of a male. It says, just for fun, let's identify masked Minotaurs of films that have male leads, including The Dark Knight, The Godfather, Amadeus, Fight Club, Rambo, John Wick, and The Game. So it's interesting that Fight Club even comes up at this part of the story. But the sacred fire is where I started to unpack this along the lines where Marla Singer took on greater significance. Because the sacred fire, now here's something I could share here as well. So this is another. Let me try sharing this real quick. Oh, can you see that, Heath?
Well, there.
Right. So the sacred fire is very complex and intriguing. So you've got the native culture, which wants some level of continuity or conformity. And he's clearly, and you see the arrows pointing to the heroine and away from the heroine from the native culture. The native culture expects conformity, like the boss. It's embodied by the boss in this movie. And the heroine resists that. And then you've got the masked Minotaur, which attempts to capture the heroine, and the heroine ends up rejecting that, which this heroine does. He turns against Tyler Durden in the end. In some cases, there's a relationship between the native culture and the masked Minotaur, as you can see up here. That's not really the case here. That's usually the case when there's a suitor. If a social apex character is trying to marry the heroine, sometimes the native culture approves of that. So you've got the native culture approving of the evil suitor scenario, but that's not really the case here. So anyway, in this case, though, the sacred fire is very important. So there's three claims that are made, and the hero or the heroine wants individuation. They want to be an individual. They want to way away from the rules of the native culture. Clearly the case with Cornelius. The masked Minotaur wants total possession. That comes later. So, but also what the heroine pursues tells you what they care about most. What is their cause? In this case, their cause ends up being Marla Singer. She ends up being the person or the character that Cornelius cares about most. And she is always introduced smoking that cigarette. So she does have a little fire symbol there. Again, probably unconscious, but it's there. He And she's the thing that causes Cornelius to turn against the Minotaur and Project Mayhem and all the things going on in this story. He chooses to go for Marla Singer. That's why the movie opens with the gun in his mouth, and he's like, all of this has something to do with Marla Singer. That tells you she's crucial to what's going on with this, with the main character of the story, Cornelius. It's what he ends up caring about most. And he even says to her in that restaurant, he's like, I really like you, Marla. And he lays it out. He's confessing to her. He's basically in love with her. He wants to protect her. So anyway, so when he claims a sacred fire, he wants to go away from the corporate culture in Fight Club. The captivity. Okay, so the next step is actually not the captivity bargain. This is where it's different. The next event is the Black Swan.
You say it can happen anytime. So
right.
In this movie, the Black Swan comes before the captivity bargain.
Right.
Just
and
before.
it could come in. Yeah, it could really come in at any time. So the Black Swan, a temporary destabilizing or disrupting event, usually caused by nature. In this case, it's not quite nature, but it's a disruptive and destabilizing event. Often includes apocalyptic imagery or severe damage to the home environment. The Black Swan reinforces the heroine, in this case, Cornelius, distrust of predictable human conventions. And the randomness and chaos of the Black Swan may help or hinder the heroine, in this case, Cornelius. So you could say it harmed him because it blew up his house. But if you understand the philosophy of anti-consumerism, did it not help him? If the things you own end up owning you, then this is a solution to that, the Black Swan. So there's this massive disruptive event, which leads him to the call to adventure. And the call to adventure, which we said was a literal phone call after the Black Swan event. It's a literal call, and it's Tyler Durden, and he says, "Meet me, out at the bar." That's the call to adventure that moves the hero Cornelius out of the problems with the native culture and toward this other path. And he meets Tyler at this bar, and Tyler lays out a complete anti-consumerism philosophy. So, and what's the next thing? He goes to Paper Street, and to me, this is the captivity bargain. So the facets of the captivity bargain. The heroine usually agrees to the captivity bargain willingly. The heroine typically makes the captivity bargain to reconcile competing claims to the sacred fire. It allows him to continue to go to work, so he's still honoring the native culture in that sense. It allows him to have a relationship with Tyler Durden and explore the non-conforming side of things. So it gives him that ability. And it allows him to still see Marla Singer, which comes up later. So this is a solution for him to pursue all three claims to the sacred fire. The captivity bargain appears to be a reasonable solution to the heroine's problems. The characters who demand, recommend, or present the captivity bargain are often trusted or in a position of authority, often resent a counterintuitive step toward freedom, which I believe is true. It's his first effort at breaking out of his confining lifestyle. And the captivity bargain is usually associated with inexperience, immaturity, and innocence. So this is clearly him before any of the damage has been done.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So, so the beast as ally is really the next theme. And this is where what's that?
We don't. Okay. So we don't have Cult of Deception.
We do.
Oh, okay.
It's a very cult of. I guess
we'll go in the order. They go in the order you want to. I was just thinking that. Oh man, by the time you get into
Cult of Deception makes sense because in this case, the Cult of Deception is his schizophrenia. So you could definitely say this is where that starts, or starts as an official way of life for him. So the Cult of Deception is. I'll read so the Cult of Deception is a system of illusions, obstructions, and competing motivations that work against the heroine. The masked Minotaur's evil nature is often the central deception. The heroine is sometimes watched or surveilled, usually by the Minotaur. Ulterior motives are one of the more persistent forms of deception. Frequently, neutral characters even try to redirect the heroine. The heroine may discover or disrupt secret truths about the story world. In this case, believe it or not, it's the truths about the corporation. Those are secrets that the corporation doesn't want others to know. That actually is a very persistent theme, and that's a good one in this one because it has widespread ramifications later. The cult of deception provides a powerful intuition within the heroine. Other characters may be hiding details about the heroine's identity. Huge in this one. That is a major feature of the cult of deception in Fight Club. So that would be the next step. And then I think it's fair to go into the Beast as ally. That relationship begins immediately, and I think Tyler Durden almost perfectly fits the Beast as ally. He's a non-conforming member, and there's even a I even mentioned that a lot of times in heroine-centric stories, there's a why they turn into romances, because there's an attraction to this character. And although these are two guys, there is a sort of they even refer to themselves as Ozzy and Harriet at one point. There is this kind of strange relationship between them in the film. But Tyler Durden is absolutely the Beast as ally. He's the non-conforming, antisocial guy who the heroine may or may not be attracted to. And the Beast adopts the heroine's cause. Tyler Durden takes he was just selling paper as far as we know beforehand, right? Once he meets Cornelius, he takes the anti-consumerism attitude of Cornelius and militarizes it. So absolutely adopts the heroine's cause, or Cornelius's cause in this case. And here's the difference between the Beast as ally and the Masked Minotaur. The Masked Minotaur cannot surrender their claim to the heroine. And that is the case with Tyler Durden. When Tyler Durden's like, I don't want this anymore, the Masked Minotaur fights him. Like, he does not he's like, you're not going anywhere.
Even tying him to a chair at the end. And
which is a common thing for the Masked Minotaur to do. But in the Poisoned Apple segment of a story, you almost always have imagery of an unconscious or restrained heroine with the Masked Minotaur hovering overhead. It's unbelievable how often this imagery appears at that segment of the story. And it even appears in Fight Club with two males, where he's tied to the chair and the Masked Minotaur is hovering above him. And it's the Poisoned Apple moment, which I'll get to later. But that Tyler Durden is the Masked Minotaur, who also fulfills the Beast as ally. Yeah, he's like the bad boy that the girl likes, right? So that is this role in this, without a doubt. And then Chambers and Chamber Guardians. And this one's interesting. So the Chamber Guardian scenario in the Heroine's Labyrinth, which is not the same as a Threshold Guardian, where you enter a chamber and and if you look, that guy is behind a desk. There's usually someone behind a desk who you walk into and you ask for something. There's some sort of exchange. And for the Chamber Guardians, the first one is the office. And the Chamber Guardian is his boss. He's literally behind a desk.
Then, right? Yes.
Yeah, he's literally behind a desk. And there's a social test. Let me get to that part real quick. The social test. Oh, yeah, we're going backwards. The Chamber Guardian is typically an administrative type of person. Administrative trickster is how I refer to him. Is usually an authority figure of the space they occupy. The confrontation between the heroine and the Chamber Guardian is based on an exchange. And that's now in this case, it's blackmail. He is clearly extorting him. There's definitely an exchange here. He's like, and my job will be to never, he literally gives them the exchange. You will pay me this amount of money, and my job will be never to tell the people about the things I know.
And I can even work from home.
And this job I can do from home. So now it even says, it says they may recruit the Chamber Guardian. That doesn't happen here. But let me get to this. So there will usually be a social test that the heroine must pass. So in order to get the information, the heroine has to do something and pass a test in order to get what they're exchanging. And this one's one of the most creative tests I've ever seen. He's like, get out of here. You're fired. No. Boom. I'm going to beat myself up and say that you did it. Unbelievable. And again, it reinforces something we talked about earlier, this idea of switching the power dynamic through self-masochism, right?
Yes,
with Luke.
right.
So he uses this strategy with the Chamber Guardian here. Funny enough, the next Chamber Guardian and chamber is the basement of Lou's Tavern, and the Chamber Guardian is Lou. He's the authority figure of that space, and he uses the exact same strategy for an exchange. Let us stay here, Lou. He's exchanging. It's an exchange. He wants to be able to use the basement and leave us alone. And at the end, Lou agrees. Okay, take the basement. Get off me, you psycho. That fits the model of a chamber and a chamber guardian in trying to enforce, and the heroine passing the test. It's the same strategy, even self-masochism, in order to pass this test and get what he wants in the exchange. The other one is only because there's a social test involved. It's Tyler Durden himself. They're in the kitchen, and he's sitting on one side of the table, so it's like a desk, and the heroine is on the other side, and he's like, this is a chemical burn, and he kisses his hand and pours lye on it, and it's a test, and it even becomes a test that all the members of Project Mayhem have to follow. That bartender later, when he's like, you're Tyler Durden, he's like, you're the one who gave me this, and it's the chemical burn on the back. So this is clearly a social test. His job is to accept the pain and to let go, which he ends up, remember, he's trying to think of his heart chakra. And Tyler's like, don't do it the way those dead people do it. Stay here. Stay with your pain. So he passes the test, and then he pours the vinegar on it, and he clears it so that it doesn't hurt anymore. And then the only other one that I came up with, and this one I don't fully understand, but I didn't know what else to make of it in the story. And I'd even be curious what other people think. It closely resembles a chamber and a chamber guardian scenario, but it's different. And it's the exchange with Raymond K. Hessel. The masked Minotaur goes in there, and Raymond K. Hessel's behind a desk, but, as a cashier, and he pulls him out of there, and he puts a gun to his head, and he's like, what did you want to be, Raymond? And he gives him the challenge of going to pursue his dreams, or else I'll blow your brains out. Which is the exact opposite message. That's why he calls him a human sacrifice. Tomorrow will be the greatest day of Raymond K. Hessel's life. His breakfast will taste better than it ever has before. And he says, I'll come and check on you. So it seems to fit that scenario, but I can't quite make anything else out of it structurally, why this scene would be in there. And I'm even curious, what do you think?
Well, I see. I did have, let me see what I wrote down on that, because I did bring that up. So maybe I didn't. Fight with Lou. That's after that. Yeah, I say, okay, so what did you want to be? Well, it's, I was thinking about that in terms of the rebellion against the society that is holding you back, because he says that everybody was supposed to be a movie star or a millionaire or whatever, all of this. And we're slowly getting to the point where we realize that, hey, the truth of that's not true. That was part of this. Also, the theme of, hey, listen, we can't go and do it, get married or do whatever because I'm a 30-year-old boy. I'm not growing up. And here was the situation where, Tyler, to the contrary, it is a little bit contrarian on Tyler's point that instead of recruiting the cashier to be part of Fight Club and sort of sending him to a task of not, down the spiral of nihilism, nonconformity and nihilism, ultimately, that, listen, we're going to get you on the road to purpose.
Well, of total conformity. Basically do what the native culture asks you to do and do it perfectly.
Maybe, but the native culture in that case, I think, was saying, you need to, get a job. Don't worry about your dreams. Work someplace, maybe support a family, whatever reason he's doing all of that. So for all,
I see.
I guess I would say that maybe he was, because it's not a lot, but the reason I had to leave school because I had a kid and I had to, or I don't know, whatever that is. There's some reason that he didn't.
It was too expensive.
It's too expensive. It's whatever. So he chose to not pursue his dreams, maybe conform to some other thing, which seemed to be more like the corporate structure. You had a dream. It was to be a veterinarian. We're going to kick you up. And so actually, I think as I was first watching that, maybe the very first time, that I thought that was going to be a theme that they were going to return to with all of the Fight Club and Project Mayhem guys, but they didn't. So I admit that one stands out a bit weird. I think it hits those themes, but it reverses what Tyler does in most other circumstances.
Correct. And he does refer to him as a human sacrifice. So it's almost like he's not Fight Club material, but he can break out of the monotony of the system by going for the highest goal possible, which for him was a veterinarian. So aim high, go for the higher ambition, don't settle, become your best self, which is a contrarian message for Tyler. But even I think the voiceover says it made sense in a Tyler kind of way. Isn't the voiceover along those lines?
It's something like that. Tyler does want people ultimately for Project Mayhem that can do things now in a very subservient kind of way, but they are going to become people of action. Like if they just stay down there and beat each other up, well, I mean, where do you go from there? But they do become men of action, like I said, in a very conformist kind of way that implies like lack of individuality on the other side of it. But they are men of action. So the guy that he sends off to become a veterinarian, he's also sending him off to become a man of action, but a constructive man of action rather than a destructive man of action. So yeah, you're right.
Which honestly is a better solution.
Which is a better solution.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean, there was that one. I guess that's why I kind of thought that, wait a minute, there's going to be kind of the theme here. Attack what you really wanted. Don't sacrifice. If that's what you wanted, all of a sudden you end up working a cashier's job. Attack, like go for you. That would have been a more positive message of the movie, but it did not end up being that.
Yeah, I agree. And he even says it's something. He's like, why don't you become a veterinarian, Raymond? And he's like, it's too expensive and blah blah. He's like, is it better that I blow your brains out? And he's like, no. He's like, well, then become a veterinarian, or else I'll blow your brains out. So it's quite a deal that he strikes with Raymond. It's like a Chamber Guardian scenario. There's definitely an exchange, but it also reverses, in a sense, the purpose. He wants the Chamber Guardian. I guess you could. One of the things it says is sometimes the heroine recruits the Chamber Guardian, but I wouldn't say that quite fits either. So anyway, it was kind of this weird. It seems to, out of all these themes, it fits this the most. Mm-hmm. However, it's a standalone part of this movie that runs counter to the messaging in the movie. It runs counter to the archetype, even though it's similar. So I put it down because everyone remembers Raymond K. Hessel in that scene. It has some significance. It has some weight. It has some punch to it. And yet it seems to be an orphan to the story and an orphan to the structure, even when I was trying to make sense of it. But I wrote it down under Chamber and Chamber Guardian because there is an exchange. There is a chamber. It seems to fit to some extent that motif.
It seems like there's another story that could be told that's a character like what Tyler Durden does in that scene that like comes to you as a horrific figure in the middle of the night and stuff, like an angel of death kind of, and gives you the choice. Listen, what are you doing? You're not doing what you're supposed to be, what you were intended to, on the planet to do. You got two choices. You can either go and do that or I kill you. Just get out of here. Right. Yeah. You're going to be out of here. That would be like an angel of death. Yeah. Angel of death kind of, Christmas Carol kind of thing when you're visited by somebody like that who, shakes you up in that way.
That's very interesting. And I would almost, there is a sequel to Fight Club. He wrote a sequel to it. I'd be curious to see if he revisits Raymond K. Hessel at all. I haven't read it, but I know it's out there.
Maybe it would be great to be able to talk to him about this. Andrew says, was it to get the viewer to sour on the journey that looked tempting at the start? Is it the bridge too far? It has been a long time since I watched it, but we need to see that Brad Pitt is not good.
But see, I thought that this was one of the few moments, because it's a nihilistic, almost fascist type of movie. And this one scene made me feel like, if the choice was I'll blow your brains out or pursue your dream, you'd pursue your dream. So it was the one thing that I felt like it was a positive message.
Yeah, I know. That was the positive side of his horrible
even
personality.
Though it's barbaric for him to hold a gun to someone's head, there was a sense that Raymond's life has just improved. He's motivated, he's going to change. He's going to make some changes, and it's not going to be by blowing up buildings. He's going to go pursue and become a veterinarian. And luckily it was a pretty worthy pursuit. Who's going to argue with a vet? A vet is a great profession. Yeah, he did do a sequel in comic book form as well. Andrew, the first half that you read, did you like it? Was it good? I'm just curious because I've seen it. I just never. Fight Club is so good. Like, I didn't want to ruin it by opening book 2 because it didn't.
Just in case.
Go anywhere.
Hey, Druden Fuzz. Good evening.
Oh, awesome. Druden Fuzz is here.
All right. So
yeah, Chuck did, okay. So yeah. So anyway, I just thought it was curious and interesting, a topic standalone with Raymond K. Hessel. So the fragile power is Robert Paulson, Bob. The fragile power is a pretty key element in the heroine's labyrinth because the heroine befriends a seemingly insignificant or powerless character. The fragile power often appears in the story as small or childlike. I would argue he's not small, but I would argue he is childlike.
Yeah, yes, he is childlike.
The way he comes across. The character appears to be unnecessary or even a burden to other characters. When he joins Project Mayhem, he actually fails the test. And Robert Paulson is not up to this task. Why he dies. He's not really Project Mayhem material. So that's a clue. The heroine, Cornelius, eventually entrusts the fragile power with something important to the story, which was the mission in this case. The fragile power possesses some knowledge or a secret ability. That's not true in this case. The fragile power may subtly reflect the heroine from an earlier part of the story. I think that's only true in the sense that they were both in that support group together, but I don't think it means that. And the fragile powers often legitimizes the heroine's autonomy or authority. I think that's partially true with Bob. The issue with the fragile power is that they're weak, vulnerable, and in need of some sort of protection. And what's interesting is that it's proven because Bob doesn't survive Project Mayhem. He is the weak link. He should have never joined. They had a test to vet Project Mayhem people. You stand on the porch and they belittle you. They hit you. They try to run you off. He even says, if he's fat, make fun of him for being fat. If they give up, let him go. The idea is that in order to make Project Mayhem, you have to pass this test. Bob fails this test. He turns around and walks away, and it's Cornelius who runs after him. Bob. Come on. It's okay. I know you didn't pass the test, but I'll let you in. He shouldn't have been involved with Project Mayhem. Gets him killed. He gets his head blown out. And that's important later because I actually say, the broken truce, which I think is the next one here. Oh, no. So the fragile power is Bob. The next motif in this case is home is battleground. So it's early in this one. Home is battleground is important because it's the home itself is the center of the labyrinth. That's true in this movie because when he starts tracking down, when he goes on this investigative montage to figure out who's who, it leads him right back to Paper Street and the house, and it's abandoned. You see the bathtubs, you see all the nitroglycerin and the soap and all this stuff, but it's empty. So that is the center of the labyrinth. That's his headquarters. That's Tyler Durden's headquarters. An invasion of the inner sanctum signals that even the safest places have been compromised by the Minotaur. So Paper Street is totally compromised by the Minotaur. And he says it when he starts Project Mayhem. He's like, this home has become a living, breathing thing of its own. All these people are coming and going. It's its own thing. And what is Cornelius doing in this? Kind of just wandering around. He almost has no purpose in this. So his home, Paper Street, is now compromised. It is now the headquarters of Project Mayhem. That is a problem.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right. So
yeah.
And it says the symbolic meaning behind Home is Battleground is a contest of the heroine's will against the Minotaur's power. So in this movie, the final confrontation, which should have been Home is Battleground, is in a parking garage and a hotel room. Now, if the theory is that Cornelius lives in the hotel room, then there's a case that that it actually works. I never heard that. So when I watched this, I didn't make that connection. I think the movie would have been better if this final battle took place inside Paper Street rather than in a parking garage. I understand why they did it, because that's where that van was parked. But technically, if you were going to do a perfect version of this archetype, that final fight between him and Tyler would have been in the home, inside this home. Other than that, the home is compromised by the masked Minotaur, undeniably. And then we have the unmasking. And this is pretty clear in this one. And this one's kind of a fun one because it's a schizophrenic issue. The masked Minotaur is unmasked. And for the unmasking, the heroine unmasked the Minotaur by revealing the hidden forms of tyranny and ego. So the unmasking officially takes place when he's in the bar. And you got that bartender with the head support. He's like, "Is this a test, sir?"
Oh.
And he's like, "Who do you think I am?" And he goes, "You're Mr. Durden." And he's like, "Put your trays in upright position." And he's like, "Oh my God." But there's actually like 3 unmaskings. That was the first time he's told he's Tyler Durden. Then he goes and gets Marla, and she's like, "You're Tyler Durden, Tyler Durden." So she confirms it. And the hotel room chat with Tyler Durden, he's like, "Because I'm you." He's like, "I think you know why." It's kind of a funny conversation. But there's 3 unmaskings. One was with the bartender. One was with Tyler in the hotel room. And then the third was with Marla Singer. He has 3 confirmations that he's Tyler Durden. And she even says, once you show me your sensitive side, and then the next minute you're a total asshole. She refers to him as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that's when Marla begins to be threatened by Tyler Durden. So now what's interesting here is I looked for Shield Maiden. And the Shield Maiden is important because it's literally when the heroine jumps in front and physically imposes herself between the Minotaur and usually a fragile power or defenseless person. He doesn't do that exactly, but he does jump in front of this bus with the exact same physical attitude.
To save Marla. The purpose is to save Marla, to get her out of there.
It is totally to save Marla, but he adopts this thing. So it's not a perfect archetype by any stretch. However, it's just really unusual that at this moment of the story, this guy jumps in front of a bus physically, like in that exact same arms out, legs out, like blocking somebody, physically interposing themselves. So there is that as far as the Shield Maiden goes. And then this is where we get the broken truce. And the broken truce drives the rest of the story toward the end, because he turns against Project Mayhem. And Project Mayhem turns against him. The broken truce.
You even have police figures after him.
Exactly. Yeah. So law enforcement. There's usually this idea that the masked Minotaur marshals social forces against you. So the broken truce is when the heroine breaks the captivity bargain, abandons Paper Street, which technically works here if the archetypes, since the archetypes line up. Breaks the captivity bargain, is not interested in working with Tyler Durden. The Minotaur usually marshals social forces within the native culture against the heroine. He tries to call and warn the skyscrapers, and they're like, "Don't worry, sir. Airtight. We're on it, sir." So every place that he's trying to reach is compromised. He goes to the police station, like we said earlier. And I mentioned in Terminator, which is a heroine-centric story, she goes to the police station, and it's a very famous scene where the safe havens are just overturned by the masked Minotaur. That's true here. he goes to the police station, and the cops are all in on it. They're all members of Project Mayhem. He's like, you guys are police officers. He's like freaking out about it. Often accompanies a rapid pursuit of the heroine. Clearly the case that he's like, I ran until my body was battery acid. They're chasing him. A threat to the fragile power may trigger the broken truce. My theory was that Robert Paulson, was the fragile power. His head's blown out. That's when he turns against Project Mayhem. So that actually holds up here. A threat, in this case, a manifested threat, since he dies, to the fragile power may trigger the broken truce. May result in a challenge to the native culture, including changes to traditions, rules, moral authority, or gender roles. In this case, it's the moral authority of Tyler Durden. And may result in tragedy such as imprisonment, madness, death, or suicide, which he attempts later on in this movie because of this broken truce. So this broken truce is not resolved in this part of the story where he's being pursued. But they're trying to capture him, and they end up getting him. So the next scene is when they do capture him, and this is the poisoned apple. So this comes a little bit later. But the poisoned apple is when the masked minotaur with the broken truce is pursuing the heroine. They're going after him. The truce is broken between them, and the masked minotaur is striking. The poisoned apple is usually delivered by the masked minotaur, usually delivered through premeditation and in bad faith, sometimes disguised. So I'll just tell you what I think it is first. It's when he shoots himself in the mouth. Boom! Knocks out, disorients, or disables the heroine. The poison is something internal, ingested, injected, implanted, or embedded. This is definitely internal as it goes right in. It's literally through the mouth, like a bite of the apple in the mouth, blows off half his face. Usually includes a restrained or unconscious heroine. He's not unconscious. He is unconscious and wakes up, and he's restrained. So it has that motif of the masked minotaur with the restrained heroine, and then the ingested poisoned apple. Often depicts a menacing figure hovering above or nearby the heroine. Usually precedes a failed attempt to convert the heroine or persuade her to accept a new captivity bargain. All the dialogue with Tyler Durden here is absolute. He's trying to reconvince.
Yeah,
100%. He's like, come on, man. We started this. We're going to do this. And then the masked minotaur often attempts to extract, steal, diminish, or destroy the heroine's sacred fire. In this case, I said the heroine's sacred fire is Marla Singer. And he absolutely tries to destroy Marla Singer. That was his whole purpose. He's trying to kill Marla Singer. So it's a poisoned apple moment, and it hits almost every beat of the archetype. And then finally, we have the broken spell. And this one's a little bizarre. This one's very bizarre, and I'll tell you why.
Is this when the gun shows up in his hand?
No, that's him.
Oh, no. Okay.
That's not. Well, you could say that that's part of it. I didn't even think of that, Heath.
When he says that gun isn't in your hand, it's in mine. That's what I was thinking the broken spell was.
That actually works. Yeah, he's figuring out. Well, I'll tell you what I think the broken. You're making me rethink it to some extent because it's in this segment. That is breaking the spell. He's figuring out how to reverse engineer his schizophrenia. But the broken spell, it's weird because I think it's when the buildings blow up. This is not a positive. This is not the positive broken spell at all. This is a subversion of the broken spell because it actually manifests what he originally wanted, which was the attack on the corporate culture. He even says we're going to go to economic equilibrium by destroying these credit card companies. Everyone goes back to zero. So the broken spell, the heroine breaks the core deception of the masked minotaur in the story world. That supports what you just said. 2, the world or setting experiences a rapid rearrangement. That happens with these buildings blowing up and detonating and collapsing. It's not a positive, but it's certainly a rapid rearrangement, especially if everybody goes to economic equilibrium. That's a massive restructuring of society. Two, this is where the transition moves from darkness to light. I guess it's at night and the explosions are light. You could make that case, but what I'm really meaning is that it goes from dark to light, like clear. Not quite the case here. The imagery and symbolism highlights growth, life, color, and
the
creation.
inversion of a trope can still be the presence of that trope.
And I think that's what this is, 100%. It's an inversion of the trope because it says the imagery and symbolism, those buildings collapsing, highlights growth, life, color, and creation. I don't know if it means that directly. The vision was, if we go to economic equilibrium, it's a better world. In Tyler's mind, that's what's happening. This is the good thing. This is the restructuring of society. The hidden victims are freed. To him, we're all victims of consumerism and corporate culture. We're all held captive. Now we're free. We're free of economic responsibility by the destruction of this. So that still works. And the Minotaur is either defeated or reformed. He's defeated. He ends up disappearing. And then, so that's the broken spell. In this one, it's a very dark take on the broken spell. But it is in line with what the heroine wanted in the beginning. He hated it. He destroyed the labyrinth, which was corporate culture, corporate America, consumerism. It's destroyed. So the heroine succeeds in that by that stretch. And then the last trope is atonement. And atonement is you have to reconcile the three claims to the sacred fire, which is the heroine's claim, which is Marla Singer. That's what he wants. The Minotaur's claim, which is the heroine, and the native culture's claim. And Marla is there. So she is there. She has reconciled what the heroine wanted, his sacred fire, what he fought to protect, what he wanted, what changed him. She's there. And he actually says this is the start of something beautiful. And he holds her hand. So there's a sense that they have reconciled in this scene. Tyler is dead. So the Mass Minotaur's claim over him is gone. And finally, he destroyed the native culture. He destroyed the labyrinth. This is all reconciled in the scene. So it actually works as an atonement scene. The three claims on the sacred fire are all dealt with and in this single scene. So it's a dark take, but it hits every trope, every beat in the heroine's labyrinth in a very unique way. And I love it. It's fascinating.
Well, I'm really glad that we ended this way, or you got to do this, because you said that, wow, this hits every beat of the heroine's labyrinth, even though it is a male character who's going through all of this. So this is perfect to illustrate that. And so I'm extremely glad that you were able to walk us through this. I think this is really important.
And that's why I think the sacred fire ultimately was femininity, which was embodied by Marla Singer. I think that this character was out of balance by that. And I know that there's different takes. I think Tyler was anti-woman, anti-feminine, but I think Cornelius was not. And I think his balancing was Marla Singer. I think he needed femininity. And like I said, there was several references to femininity in this story. The fragile power, like we said, Bob had bitch tits. You know, there's like this physical attribute of a woman on a man. There's the castration themes. Hold on. The lipstick red sacanals. The stealing of fat, which is the part of a woman's body, according to the story. The breast exam. And he even says at some point, like you said, that Tyler is anti-woman, or, like stay away from women. He's also anti-male because he makes the comment, if our dads were supposed to be God and our dads failed, what does that tell you about God? So he's not very pro dad either. He thinks his dad's wrong, and and he thinks that, there's some anti-woman commentary, but I think in essence, there's a clear, and it might be unconscious by the writer, a desire for femininity in these characters. He even, remember at one point, I was trying to figure this out too. He beats up Jared Leto. He just pounds him into submission, and it's not Tyler doing it. It is Cornelius doing it. And he said, I needed to destroy something beautiful.
Right. Yeah, I wrote that down too. I needed to destroy something beautiful.
Right.
Which goes back to the self-destructive
Yes.
elements of all of this. I felt like destroying something beautiful. And also
Yes.
a theme of self-sabotage I wrote around that too. When you've got
It is.
something good going for you, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I got something good here. I feel like I need to destroy something beautiful. It's self-sabotage.
But that is the anti-feminine approach. And I would say that Jared Leto's character represented a more feminine version, or a beautiful man, or a beautiful version of Project Mayhem and it's not Tyler beating him up. That was the key. That was Cornelius pounding him into submission to the face where that guy's face is deformed. I forgot his name. But anyway, my take if structurally, by understanding what the sacred fire was, what it was that the hero in this case, Cornelius, what he cared about was Marla Singer. That's who he protected. That's who he broke the truce for. That's who he ended up reconciling with at the end. She represented the feminine, and she says to him in that restaurant, you have serious emotional problems that you need to get professional help for. So she has the sensitivity, she has the concern and the care, the self-care that he was completely against, or Tyler was against, with his self-destructive anti-consumerism, anti-material philosophy. So it's very interesting. Oh, and the Black Swan, which we talked about as destabilizing, and this idea of randomness being in control. In the section of the Black Swan, I have a whole thing about chaos, randomness, and heroines. And there's that scene, which otherwise wouldn't make sense, driving the car. And he lets go, and he just puts on the seatbelt, and they just let the car drive itself. That's ludicrous. That's insane. But I have this whole thing about helpful chaos and how certain heroines at times turn to the chaos or randomness of nature. One of my favorite examples is Ripley opening the airlock and just unleashing a vacuum in space. That's helpful chaos. But it says, it says Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road, and Lady Jessica in Dune endure an onslaught of a sandstorm, both of which help the heroine escape. The underlying wisdom of helpful chaos is that in these two stories seem to be flow with natural chaos rather than trying to control it. And that is a theme throughout this story. Look at you trying to control things, let go, let chaos, put chaos in the driver's seat. And this movie has an actual literal metaphor for putting chaos in the driver's seat in that scene. And that car completely wrecks. So anyway, it's just very interesting. All of these powerful tropes that you find in hero-centric stories are found heavily in Fight Club, despite the overwhelming masculine presence in the film. Yeah, that's a great comment by TSL.
This one?
Yeah. I mean, feminine versus masculine is kind of a whole premise in the shadow concept of masculinity as the whole source of the turmoil of Cornelius. I agree. It was the missing element. That was the missing element that he needed. Let chaos reign.
Right.
Well, true. There are examples. Heroines especially have an ability, from what I've studied, to trust in randomness a little bit more. Heroines tend to be very suspicious, very untrusting of human organization. They don't always believe that everything is taken care of. They believe that there could be hubris or compromised motivations. There's the famous quote by Edith Hamilton, convention, often a disguise for injustice. So heroines tend to disrupt or challenge these structures because they don't believe in them. And I even wrote about chaos isn't just randomness in a pure sense. There's a pattern, like even an explosion. A physicist can show that there's patterns that cause the explosion to blow out the way it does. They're just very complex patterns. So if maybe I'm not picking it up, heroines tend to be locked into these asymmetrical patterns better than male heroes, as far as I could tell. And so there's a willingness to trust in these complex patterns of nature. I even talk about Moses's mother putting Moses into the river and just, letting the river take him where he will, letting the chips fall and Tyler uses that phrase, Let the chips fall where they may. So he's making that. I don't know if it's feminine, but he's making the case that chaos. You could put the chaos in the driver's seat and be just fine. And heroines do espouse that logic at times in a lot of stories, and I love it. It's super interesting to me. Yeah, I have also. Yeah, I mean, I have other examples, but I think I've made the case of what I'm trying to get.
I think you made a very convincing case of what story structure this movie has gone through. That's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Well, and you see, it would be hard to adapt a hero's journey model to this. It's not impossible, but it would be much harder. You'd have to stretch those other archetypes much further to make it work, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about how to do that. I mean, that would be its own exercise to see how you would do that. But it's so interesting this fits so well.
Well, that's what I used to do. I used to put hero's journey on everything. I used to sit there. It used to be a notebook and then later a laptop. I'd watch the movie and type in each theme as I saw it. And so many were very stretched, to say the least. What did Druden Fuzz say?
Right here, chaos in the driver's seat is a prominent feature in Grail seeking stories. You can only find the Grail when not actively guiding the horse.
Oh, interesting. Well, there's also the leap of faith, which is similar, like in Indiana Jones' Last Crusade. He just steps out and trusts. He just trusts it. He is essentially stepping off of a ledge, and obviously that works out. In some cases, and it works. The same with what I'm talking about. A show of faith in something. That's a great point.
Well, is there anything else that we need to discuss as far as this movie, or I think we've covered all of my notes?
I don't know. Was there anything else? I just wanted to give a shout out to that song by the Pixies, "Where Is My Mind?" Because of this movie, I ended up falling in love with that song. I love it.
Oh, I did have just things that I wasn't quite sure how to place. This was something I didn't know how to place. That Marla writes his number. Marla writes her number on his hand.
Okay.
When he gives the number, so he gives the card, and then she comes over and writes the number on the hand. But then after the explosion in the apartment, he picks up a scrap of burned paper and sees her number written in a feminine hand.
Oh yeah, true. It's like the one thing that didn't get burned.
Right. He picks up that, and so I didn't know how to place that, but because it's not like it was written in his masculine hand, like where he would have transcribed it. It was written in a feminine hand. I wasn't sure what that meant.
Well, and it's so unlikely that one segment of a piece of paper survived.
Right.
That's true too. I was going to say there's a couple of the other like scenes that I really liked. I don't know what it was about this scene, but especially when I was like in my 20s, I loved it. And it's that scene where he's like, Tyler, it was on the tip of everybody's tongue, but Tyler just gave it a name.
Oh, right.
And there's this like cool hardcore music playing, and the bartender turns everything off, and they're just walking toward the camera, and they're headed down into the basement. I just love that scene. It's such a cool intro into really what Fight Club is going to be. Now they're not fighting out in the parking lot anymore. Now it's a little bit more serious. We've got about 50 guys here. Tyler lays out the rules. I mean, let's be honest. That lodged itself in all of our brains the second we saw it. That descent into the basement, and then him giving the rules to Fight Club, and guys taking off their rings, and if it's your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight.
You have to fight.
That's good stuff, man. Oh yeah, some of the funny things. She needs a wash. Oh yeah, there's some crazy there's some crazy dialogue in here. Anyway, yeah, I've got other things like that, but there's a bunch to like about this movie. Yeah, a literal descent, totally. But it's so cool. It's got that like cool vibe to it. Like the filmmaker got it right. That guy's got like some major mutton chops going. And it shows guys of all, these guys are not like all athletic guys. These are like blue collar dudes, just beating the hell out of each other. in this Fight Club.
All right. Well, Doug, we'll wrap it up with, hey, everybody come openly take this down. Take that down. Mine just wrapped up. My Kickstarter wrapped up just a few minutes ago. So we're going to leave you with Doug. I'll be messaging everybody on Kickstarter and sending out the surveys in order to finish this. But in the meantime, hey, go especially get the audiobook of Faraway Bird. We'll go through it and we're going to have a talk about it. Get it so that you can be ready when it's time to talk about it.
Yes, and honestly, you know, the Heroine's Labyrinth will be coming out soon, and obviously, I hope you all get it. But even just for the sake of talking about it, it's a different format with which to judge and understand films, or stories and how they fit together. Like I said, I saw things in Fight Club I did not see before when I tried to examine it under this rubric of the Heroine's Labyrinth. And it did not work the same way when I looked at it as a hero's journey. It was very, very different, and the meanings changed. So this framework gives you a new way to look at some of these stories and understand them, and it's fascinating. So I dream of one day we can get on here and talk about this without having to take my word for it.
Well, we will. We just have to. We just have to read it. All right. Well. Thank you, everybody, for being here live with us. Hopefully, if you are watching on some other channel other than the Table Talk YouTube channel, I will put the comments, the link in the stream here in the comments. Please, we're trying to grow the Table Talk, dedicated Table Talk channel. We just hit 1,000 subscribers. Actually, I think somebody unsubscribed, so I think we're back down at 999. Somebody unsubscribed. So anyway, we're right at the 1,000 mark. We were at the 1,000 mark before. We're maybe at night. So if you're watching on some other channel, come on over and hit the subscribe button on the Table Talk channel and help us hit the 1,000 again. And please hit the like button. Try to get this out to people. On Thursday, I'll be talking with Ian Runkle of Roll of Law. So he'll be here. We'll be talking about licensing, the orc license, the elf license for Dungeons and Dragons. I know a lot of people want to talk about that. And Ian Runkle has been requested to have on the show by a lot of people on the channel. So Ian will be here on Thursday night. So have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you to everybody who's been here live. Oh, good.
A quick shout out to John for the Trial of St. Gabriel. Last man in.
Yeah, last man in, right? Yes,
that was
thank
awesome.
you. So have a wonderful evening. I will see everybody later. Thank you to everybody who's been here live. It is great. And I will see, and thank you also to anybody who's watching on replay. Please do hit the like button if you're on replay and put a comment in. We read comments too. So if something something has come up and you're on replay, just put it in the comments. That will be great. We will read it. All right. Later, everybody. Good night.
Great seeing everybody.